hours, I'll be keeping you company on TV, online and on digital radio. This show will keep you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Coming up this hour, are we about to see one of the biggest shocks in British political history? It's Sadiq Khan versus Susan Hall in the race for London Mayor. Sources say it's closer than anyone was expecting. I'll bring you the result as soon as it happens. And we'll be, of course, across all of the other mayoral results today with 7 declarations taking place across England. Will the two Andys, that's Street and Burnham, be victorious? And what does it mean for politics on the national scale? Has Starmer's Labour Party lost the Muslim vote? Is the writing indeed now on the wall for Rishi Sunak? We're asking all of those very big questions. And as ever, this show is absolutely nothing without you and your views. Let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we'll be discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join that conversation there or message us on our socials. We're at GB News. First of all, though, here's the news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Darren. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 12. Our top stories. Sir Keir Starmer says the Tories don't deserve to be in government for a moment longer. That's after Rishi Sunak lost hundreds of councillors in the local elections. 102 of 107 councils have declared so far, with Labour making major gains and the Lib Dems and the Greens also doing well. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Celebrating a mayoral victory in the East Midlands, the Labour leader said the Tories' time is up.
I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your division, with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry. I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer.
Well, Andrew Griffith is Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology. He told us the public doesn't want Labour's policies.
Look, it's a difficult set of results. I think that was what was expected going in. There's going to be a very simple choice at the next election. Who walks through number 10 Downing Street? Is it Rishi Sunak with his plan that's starting to work now? Or is it Keir with no plan, or where they do have plans that don't really go with the grain of what the British people want?
Sir Keir Starmer says he remains confident that Sadiq Khan can win a third term as London Mayor. That's as the battle with Tory challenger Susan Hall appears to be closer than expected. The count is underway and we could have a result this afternoon. In total, 7 mayoral contests will be announced today. A narrow one is also expected for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. We'll also hear from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. Boris Johnson has thanked polling staff who refused to let him vote without ID. The former Prime Minister was turned away from a polling station on Thursday after he forgot valid identification. Writing in the Daily Mail, Mr Johnson said the 3 villagers were right to stick to the rules. The requirement to provide photo ID was introduced by Mr Johnson when he occupied number 10. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without water in East Sussex. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into tomorrow. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. 3 people have been charged after protesters blocked a coach taking asylum seekers to the Bibby Stockholm barge. The Met Police arrested 45 people after officers were called on Thursday morning to Peckham, South East London. The demonstrators could be heard chanting "No borders, no nations, stop deportations." 3 have now been charged with obstruction of the highway. Motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million vehicles will take to the roads today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean that local routes are congested. Also, train strikes between Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier than usual. Fuel prices have gone up by an average of 10 pence per litre so far this year. New figures are showing that the typical price for a litre of petrol reached £1.50 in April, whilst diesel came close to £1.58. The rise in prices have added around £5.50 to the cost of filling a typical family car. The RAC is calling on the Competition and Markets Authority to crack down on retailers over what they're calling unfair margins. The King is set to become the patron of the Royal British Legion. That's a role that the late Queen held for more than 70 years. It follows a major review of more than 1,000 royal patronages following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Charles will now be supporting a further 200 organisations. The decision comes as the Armed Forces charity prepares to mark the 80th anniversary of the Second World War D-Day landings on June the 6th. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Darren.
Thanks ever so, Ray. Let's get stuck into today's topics. After a bruising day for the Conservatives in these local elections, they'll be hoping to turn their fortunes around in several key mayoral races today. Meanwhile, the Labour leader has been celebrating his party's big gains. Sir Keir Starmer has been in the East Midlands today, where Labour secured a mayoral victory. And he had this to say in the last few hours.
I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your division, with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry, I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer.
Well, joining me now to discuss this is GB News' very own senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, thank you for your time as ever. This is quite seismic in and of itself, the East Midlands, because Ben Bradley, who has ended up with more political positions than goodness only knows what, he was actually seeking that job in order to actually strengthen the Conservative outlet there, and was bitterly disappointed, I think, yesterday not to win that vote.
Yes, that's right. I think that Keir Starmer has managed to pick up a clutch of mayors in various parts of the country, which shows that Labour are doing pretty well. It's not a total catastrophe for the Tories. I mean, I think that if they'd lost 600 council seats, it would have been. And the key, obviously, was Ben Houchen, the Tees Valley mayor. The fact they kept that was helpful. So I think that at least Rishi Sunak will live to fight another day.
Yeah, I mean, Nigel, what did you make of the North East result? Because obviously I was following that quite closely, given, that's where I voted. But I was really struck by the strength of force and feeling behind the independent candidate, who actually did really rather well, over 100,000 votes.
Yes, I mean, I think that this is what happens in local elections. If you get a strong independent candidate, they do tend to do well, which is why it's always dangerous to try and extrapolate a general election result from local figures. I mean, it was interesting, I think, with Ben Houchen in Tees Valley. He seemed to campaign virtually as an independent himself, rather than as a Tory mayor.
Well, the Conservatives do deny that. They say, well, hang on a minute, Ben Houchen had Rishi Sunak up there campaigning alongside of him. He listed a whole slew of things that they've done in office thanks to a Conservative government. Ben Houchen was adamant that that wasn't the case, Nigel. Do you disagree?
Yes, I do. I'm sure the Tories want to spin it the best way they can, because Ben Houchen was absolutely key to Rishi Sunak's future. But the way that the campaign went seemed to be, it was more on his own personal vote than it was for the party. Interesting, he forgot to wear his rosette at the end. He says that was just a slip rather than anything deliberate. But yeah, I do think that there was a certain feeling that in many local areas, Tory candidates were distancing themselves a bit from the national government. But I mean, you've got to actually look at the final result. As I say, that the loss of 460 odd councillors for the Tories, that's really bad, but not an absolute disaster. It puts them kind of on a par with 1995, when Labour again were 21 points ahead in the polls.
So, I mean, Nigel, then, given that we're previewing London, I know you're not Mystic Meg, but I'm about to ask you to be. Where do you think we're going here? Because we're hearing from several sources on both sides that it could go either way.
Yeah, I'm genuinely surprised about that. The polls have been predicting an easy win for Sadiq Khan. Clearly, the whole thing is closer than we thought. And so we know that turnout is down. That may be of benefit to the Tories in that the outlying Tory areas might have actually turned out rather better than Labour ones, as expected. So what it looks like at the moment, I'd have said Sadiq Khan will win. We'll have to see in a few hours' time whether that's true. But quite clearly, it's a lot closer than we originally thought it ever would be.
Yeah, all right. Nigel, we'll leave that there. Thank you very much for your input. We'll be getting some more of that very soon indeed. Well, joining me now in the studio is the broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon and political commentator Matthew Stadlin. Claire, I'll start with you first. Yeah. Where do you think we're going here? Are you surprised that London is allegedly close?
No. Well, yes. No, I'm not surprised, because if you look at the country, Darren, the country is split 50-50 in anything. And even the Brexit vote was very, very close. Independence for Scotland was very, very close. It's always at 50-50. I'm not surprised either about the low turnout. People are so apathetic. People are completely sick of politicians. People are sick to the back teeth of not knowing and not being heard. That's the issue. But if you look to the manifestos of both Susan Hall and Sadiq Khan, when you erase the top headline grabbers, Susan Hall, I'll scrap you, Les. I've delivered thousands of pounds worth of free school meals to all state children in primary schools in London. If you look down, they're more or less saying the same thing. We'll increase police on the street. We will increase building of houses. We will protect renters, this, that and the next thing. So there's not that much difference apart from the top two headline grabbers. So I'm not surprised. What I am surprised about, however, is the fact that they're still political, if you understand. I would prefer a mayor to have complete parity over all the panacea of all the political networking. I think it'd be better for them not to be lynched or attached to a party, and therefore they'd have to feed into their narrative. I would prefer them to be independent candidates and to be able to liaise almost like a House of Lords crossbencher, to liaise between both sets of political planes and do the best for the people that have voted them in. And alas, Darren, that is not the case. When we go to the ballot box, we very rarely get what's best for us and what we've voted for.
I mean, Matthew, I'm assuming that you would say, well, hang on a minute, Sadiq Khan's done really great things in London.
I'm really disappointed by how low the turnout was. It's not much lower than in 2021, but 40%. When the Mayor of London has control of our transport system and has influence, at least, over issues such as policing, which really matter to people. And I find that very, very shocking, actually. I went to the polling booth. I took my 19-month-old son with me. And it was just such a wonderful experience. Putting your ex in those boxes, it feels to me, I mean, it should be a right, but it feels to me still like a privilege that so many people, just for example, the suffragettes, who did so much to make sure that everyone has a say in how our society runs.
But does that not suggest then there's a lack of support for Sadiq Khan?
I suspect possibly he's turned off some voters. I think that many people in inner city London might have assumed, because the polls had been, at least, until quite recently, firmly in his favour, they'd assumed maybe that he was going to win, so what was the point? That's always a mistake. And I think nationally, the Labour Party can learn from that I suspect they're on board with this idea that you can't take anything for granted, but if they weren't, this will be a real lesson for them, if it's as close as some people are predicting. I just want to take us back, though, pull us back a little bit, the lens back to the national picture of what happened yesterday. The big story is the Tories have been crushed, not totally destroyed, but they've lost something like 450-odd councillors. Labour have won 170 to 200 councillors so far, whatever that is. The headline is Labour. Whatever happens in these mayoral elections, Labour is on course for power.
Yes. Well, I think we're probably agreed upon the panel, are we?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And even the headlines that are coming out with West Street winning his mayoral candidacy and the dreadful comments made from Labour HQ. Labour has predominantly had a stronghold in London. Always, because of the wonderful characters that live in London, the beautiful differences that we have living in London. And I think in order to work together, they've always voted Labour. I am not a Sadiq Khan supporter at all.
Do you think London's getting less beautiful?
Absolutely it is, and it's getting more violent, and it's getting increasingly difficult to get around, to live. And, you know, we've got ULEZ, we've got people who can't drive, we've got people, key workers, and I'm talking about plumbers, electricians and people who care for people, not being able to get to work without £12.50 fines being imposed on them. And then all that's done with the introduction of the LTNs as well, which is in Sadiq Khan's back garden as well. That was him who started that. All he has done is displaced the traffic to arterial routes, and it's ridiculous.
Could I come back on some of that? First of all, I'm a proud Londoner, born and bred here. I love our city. And one of the great things, I was talking to my Kurdish taxi driver on the way to another TV studio yesterday. He said, what makes London a great city is you could get something of everything here, of every culture, every religion, every race, every cuisine, all of that. And I think that is fantastic. And by and large, Londoners rub along together really, really well. There are some caveats. Certainly, I've felt like, anecdotally, that there's been an increase in crime, petty crime. Well, I indeed had my phone nicked off me from behind by someone.
Oh, we're not still bringing that up, Matthew.
on an electric bike. I didn't bring it up, Claire. It was Darren. No, Darren just said that I had experienced crime. But we've got to be careful with anecdote. We certainly have.
We have those
we certainly have issues with knife crime, but we also had serious issues with knife crime when I kind of started out in politics 20 years ago. Whoever is mayor has to do more, if they're able to cut that, because it is a real blight. It's a real blight on our society.
He's right. It is a real blight. But, you know, Sadiq Khan has had 8 years to help sort this out, and he's not done it.
We'll get more from the two of you on that. I can see that heating up already. So thank you very much, Claire and Matthew Stadlin there. Right, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and your chance to win the biggest cash prize of the year so far. It's a whopping £20,000. Imagine what you could do with all of that extra cash. Here's how you could win it all.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. Thank you for your company. We've got loads more coming up on today's show. Next, we'll be crossing live to City Hall. How close is Susan Hall to defeating Sadiq Khan? We'll get the feeling on the ground. And after the Conservatives' worst election results in 40 years, is it time for Rishi Sunak to admit defeat? All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Offline and overlooked. That's what Age UK say millions of British pensioners are. Why? Because they cannot or won't access the internet. It's leading to digital exclusion. So the charity's campaigning for public services like banks, utilities and even the NHS to maintain a more human approach.
Everything's online. People assume you've got a smartphone with a mobile number and an email, and without that you don't exist in this world anymore. We've got to try and get the government to see that it's so important to make people feel that they belong, because there's a feeling that the older generation just feel that they're forgotten, they're in the way, and we already know that anyway, but it's just another reason for them to feel that they're not wanted. They'll just accept it and they'll say, well, that's it, I can't do it anymore. And that's it, whereas other people would be really kicking and screaming. So we need to be the voice for older people.
Despite digital technology playing an increasing role in our lives, around 1 in 5 over 65s in the UK don't use the internet. Thornycroft Centre in Pontefract, West Yorkshire, provides a space for this age group to socialise and get help to go online.
I'm not that good with mobiles, so when you mention anything about online, I ain't a clue what you're talking about.
The closure of thousands of banks is also detrimental to the older generation.
A lot of our members what come, they tend to use cash. They don't like to use bank cards. I think a lot of it's trust or the lack of knowledge. They don't understand how it works. I think they're very vulnerable as well with online. It's really important that they're aware how to use it and how to use it safely.
So, in an online era, it's still crucial for many to have an offline option.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Thank you very much for doing so. Well, Peter says, dear people of London, if you vote Sadiq Khan in, then you deserve everything you get. He's not holding back, is Peter. And actually, there's a fair few comments pushed back against what Matt Stadlin was saying, and Claire's face when Matthew's mugging was mentioned, which I brought up. I did bring that up. Now, there's a fair few comments actually questioning the need for devolution in general. Do we actually need all of these mayors? A few of you are questioning the actual premise of the mayoralty in general. So we'll discuss that potentially later in the show. But also the fact that there are a few fringe party votes. Yeah, Reform doing quite well in places like Blackpool, and you've got the Green Party doing well even in places like Tyneside. So there are a few questions to be answered there. Continue to get in touch though, folks. It's gbnews.com/your say. Join that conversation or message us on our socials. We're at GB News. Now, counting is underway in the London mayoral race, with the results said to be on a knife edge between Sadiq Khan and Susan Hall. Could you, Les, be what's about to catch up with Sadiq Khan? Well, joining me now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley, who's at City Hall. Olivia, what's the latest then? Are you hearing any movement?
Candidates for the Mayor of London Well, we are just hearing right behind me now, you can probably hear it pretty loudly, the results from each of the 14 London constituencies. Greenwich and Lewisham is being read out now, my constituency, as a matter of fact. The excitement in the Susan Hall camp about the Conservatives possibly scraping a surprise win is dying down a little bit. The Labour Party is looking more confident that Sadiq Khan is going to win, but it does look much, much closer than was being predicted just a week ago. The outer donut of London, as it's called, those sort of commuter areas surrounding London, Bexley, Dagenham, Bromley, had a much higher turnout, over 40%, than the inner areas of London, like Camden, Hammersmith, Islington. And traditionally, the outer areas of London, those who drive cars, those who tend to be more small C Conservative in mindset, sway more towards the Conservative Party, which is why Susan Hall's team were looking pretty enthusiastic. If, as expected, what happens is that Sadiq just manages to win, but the Susan Hall camp does pretty well, there will be questions in the Conservative Party over whether they should have picked a stronger candidate. Susan Hall has a very, very vocal gang of supporters, a very loud gang of supporters, but her campaign has been said to be pretty gaffe-prone. Meanwhile, Sadiq Khan has obviously run a pretty slick, smooth campaign. So if it does turn out that Sadiq Khan only just wins, I think the Conservative Party is going to be giving itself a long, hard look.
Yes, I mean, Olivia, some of the comments are saying, is it an intentional pun that we're saying it's on a knife's edge? And I think that tells you a lot about the fact that people are really disturbed by the levels of crime in London. I mean, you've got crime, you've got ULEZ, you've got low-traffic neighbourhoods. All of these things are having a knock-on effect, what people are saying in other parts of the country. I can't understand what London's thinking.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what is going to happen. It might still be that Susan Hall just about scrapes through. It does seem as though Sadiq Khan's popularity has taken a bit of a hit. If he does manage to win a third term, we are expecting it to be with a decreased majority. That said, obviously, any candidate fighting for a third term is going to struggle. Just look at the Conservatives at the moment, looking at the general election. But it'll be fascinating to see in just a couple of hours' time what the result will actually be and just how close it's going to get. In fact, there are rumours that the result is going to be a little bit later this afternoon, more like 4 o'clock rather than 1:30 as was originally being predicted. Is that because it's looking closer than originally expected? Another factor, let's just remember, is that if Susan Hall does manage to scrape this victory, it will be one of the biggest polling disasters in UK history. Right until last week, Sadiq Khan was polling 22%. But we're all getting ahead of ourselves. Let's see what happens in the next few hours.
Absolutely, Olivia, you'll be there to take us all through it and hold our hand. I'm shaking with excitement. It could actually be the biggest polling upset since Brexit. But we'll see. Olivia Utley there at City Hall. We'll be hearing more from Olivia throughout the day. Now, folks, The Times reports that Tory rebels have laid down their arms and they're prepared to put up with Rishi Sunak until the next election. Now, after Ben Houchen made a big hold for the Conservatives, the Prime Minister was quick to revel in the success at Tees Valley. And he narrowly avoided a humiliating third-place finish in the Blackpool South by-election, just there pipping Reform UK. Well, joining me to discuss this is the visiting professor at London's South Bank University, James Woodhousen. James, thank you very much for your company. Now, are you of the view here that Reform is a serious challenger to the Conservative Party? Because at a general election, that starts to look more perilous, does it not?
Well, I think first past the post makes it very difficult for Reform. I think in terms of ideas, the Tories are so exhausted that Reform is a challenge. And I think the vote for the Green Party shows that really everybody in the country, Darren, loves David Cameron, they love Ed Miliband, they love Ed Davey, if they can remember who he is. They love their local authority and the councillors who do so much, and they love their mayors, you know. So all bets are off, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, there's a fair few comments to the contrary, but yes, I'm sure that's true. And there's a fair few people saying, actually, the only reason I know Ed Davey is because of the post office scandal, and that's really put his name on the map. I doubt that's very good PR for the Liberal Democrats. But I guess the question there with the Greens, they're an interesting one, because you've got those in the sort of leafy suburbs of Conservative heartlands saying, I'm voting Green because I quite like the idea of not building any new housing and all these other things. And then in the parts of the country like that where I'm from, you had places in Tyneside that were voting for the Greens and Green councillors elected. And that's more to do with, well, I don't know who to vote for here. Actually, there's the Gaza element for the Green Party as well, where people are saying, I'm not going to vote Labour, but I want to punish them for what their stance on Gaza. I'm going to vote Green because they're pretty hardline on that. That's an interesting dynamic in and of itself.
Well, I think one thing it shows, Darren, is that the Muslim vote is, not a concept that I want to go along with, because different Muslims vote for different parties, including the Green Party. There's a Green Muslim councillor being elected. So I think it's very wrong to just sort of, in a racial manner, really, or an ethnic manner, just talk about the Muslim vote. I think what we're seeing is really not so much apathy, as one of your previous speakers said, although the turnout is always low, and particularly low in this local election. But we're seeing a lot of disgust with the establishment. My earlier remarks were meant to be ironical.
Oh, I know, don't worry.
I hope so. But so it would only take another post office scandal for a whole lot more turmoil to break out. And there's going to be another scandal like that. We're not going to stay grey forever. And people are fed up with grey. The old distinctions between left and right don't matter, because your previous speaker, the lady, said there's not much difference. That's true. Everybody sees that. Everybody's bored and exasperated by that. It can't go on.
I think you're right, James, actually, and the inbox is filling up to that effect. But James Wood has in there. Thank you very much, as ever. Now, folks, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. Now, up next, the result of the London mayoral election. That's fast approaching. We don't know what time we're going to get it, but we know we're going to get it this afternoon, so bear with us. And I'm going to be speaking to the man who knows exactly what it's like to run against Sadiq Khan. That's right, Lord Shaun Bailey is live in the studio. That's up next. First of all, though, here's the news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Darren. It's 12:31. Good afternoon. Sir Keir Starmer says the Tories don't deserve to be in government for a moment longer. That's after Rishi Sunak lost hundreds of councillors in the local elections. 103 of 107 councils have declared so far, with Labour making major gains. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Celebrating a mayoral victory in the East Midlands, the Labour leader said the Tories' time is up. Well, Sir Keir Starmer says he remains confident that Sadiq Khan can win a third term as London Mayor. That's as the battle with Tory challenger Susan Hall appears to be closer than expected. The count is well underway and we could have a result very soon. In total, 7 mayoral contests will be announced today. A narrow one is also expected for Conservative Mayor Andy Streets in the West Midlands. We'll also be hearing from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without water in East Sussex, causing a drastic impact on businesses. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into tomorrow. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. And motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million vehicles are taking to the roads today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean local routes are congested. Also, train strikes between this coming Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back to Darren.
Cheers very much, Ray. Now, remember, folks, you can let me know all your thoughts on today's stories we've been discussing by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join that conversation there or message us on our socials. We're at GB News. Now, coming up next, I speak to the man who knows exactly what it's like to run against Sadiq Khan. Lord Shaun Bailey is here live in the studio. All of that and more to come. I'm Darren Grimes and you're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was, it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dales Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. Incredibly sad. And it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dines says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact, that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
A very warm welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Now, some breaking news. Labour's Steve Rotherham has been re-elected as Mayor of the Liverpool City region. Now, we're just moments away from hearing who will be the next London Mayor. It was the lowest turnout since 2012. And there's growing noise that the Conservative candidate, Susan Hall, could be about to spring an almighty upset. Here's her rival, Sadiq Khan, speaking on the campaign trail.
We've been both tough on the complex causes of crime, deprivation, alienation, poverty, lack of opportunities, and tough on the causes of crime, supporting the police. We've made good progress. So we've invested in record numbers of youth clubs. youth workers, young people, but also the police. And so since 2016, notwithstanding government austerity, notwithstanding our population going up by more than a million, homicides are down, gun crime is down, the number of young people injured with a knife is down, burglaries down. According to the Office for National Statistics, not my figures, the ONS figures, you're less likely to be the victim of violence in London than the rest of the country. You're less likely to be injured as a consequence of violence in London than the rest of the country.
Right. Well, Lord Bailey pushed Khan close in the 2021 mayoral election, and he joins me now, I'm delighted to say. Shaun, thank you very much for your company.
Pleasure.
I want to start off by asking you, do you feel Susan's been let down? Let down by perhaps some even within our own party, sort of sneered at? Do you think actually the media have done a fair bit of sneering? I know the political class within the Labour Party, they've certainly done it. Wes Streeting tweeted, "A win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over." I mean, that kind of rhetoric is just deeply alarming, is it not?
Look, where to start? Firstly, to address Wes Streeting's comments, because for me personally, they were really offensive. One of the growing trends in London is the fact that communities are at each other's throats, yeah, and it's comments like that from people like Wes Streeting that don't help. I was born and raised in London. I'm 52 years old. Racism now is more of an issue between communities than it's ever been, and I believe it's the likes of Wes who, on one end, are seen as respectable and knowledgeable, pumping nonsense like this. Very offensive statement. And I'd say to Wes, does he consider me a white supremacist? Because I don't.
Well, you know,
I really don't consider myself that.
No.
And I think it's offensive to do that. That's the first thing. I think on a sort of more personal level, Susan Hall is a colleague of mine. And yes, she is not your very slick politician. She's never claimed to be. She doesn't want to be. Susan is a woman who listens to people. Susan's a feisty woman. Susan's a woman about family, about safety. And that's what she's been trying to portray through her campaign. She's had so many sneery attacks, people saying if there was a better candidate. Well, I'll tell you something now. As someone who fought to be mayor for 3 years, a very long campaign, I've looked at what Susan's done, and I tell you right now, she's worked her socks off. And when the media, the mainstream media, treated her very badly, as they do most Tory candidates, she did the very clever thing of switching to a guerrilla campaign. And what I mean by that is she went to the doorsteps. So if she runs Sadiq Khan close now, it's a demonstration of her smart political nous, because she started knocking on doors in huge numbers to say to people, that's what they're saying about me, this is what I'm saying about myself, and I think that's been effective.
Now, some people would argue she's had a gaffe-laden campaign. I mean, would you agree with those sentiments, or do you think actually she's been pretty decent?
What I'd say is actually it's a double standard. If you're a Tory almost anywhere in the country, and definitely in London, you are treated differently by the press. That's a fact. And if they pick up all the supposed gaffes she's had, fine, I get it. Why have they not done the same to Sadiq Khan? He's had many a gaffe, he's had many things go wrong, and he seems to just, he seems to glide across it. I remember one of my colleagues saying he's Teflon, and another colleague interjecting saying, actually, the press are defending him. That's how most of the mainstream press have supported him, really, by not pointing out his gaffes in the way they may have done Susan's.
Do you know, I was really struck by an interview, a debate rather, between the two of them, and Susan Hall raised the point of saying, there are people walking around the streets of London with machetes, for goodness sake. And Sadiq Khan's reply was a very sort of sharp and snappy, well, it's not an episode of The Wire. London isn't an episode of The Wire, as if Susan Hall was talking absolute nonsense. But there are people who won't come to London from my part of the world genuinely fearful that London is awash with crime.
And they're correct. Let's be very clear. Sadiq Khan's sneering, dismissive tone shows something. He doesn't understand crime. I remember when he first tried to become mayor, he ran on a campaign that he'd get rid of stop and search, etc., etc., and he did that. He really lowered the figures. But what he did was make sure we had 2 record years for teenage knife deaths. That's under him. We've had a massive spike in crime. So when Susan says, actually, we need to look at what's going on in the street. When I ran in my campaign, I said we need to do much more stop and search. He misunderstood. He was saying stop and search is not effective for boosting arrest numbers. It's not about arrest numbers. It's about presence. It's about showing people if you're nervous and you carry a knife, you'll get caught by the police. If you're out and out villain and you carry a knife, you'll get caught by the police. This reduces the temperature on the street. And the fact that he doesn't know that has cost lives in London. And that sneering, for me, it's so painful, because in the black community in particular, our teenagers have been murdered at such a rate, and it's because we need a mayor who gets on top of that crime.
All right, just briefly, how much do you think actually Gaza has impacted upon Sadiq Khan's vote?
I think very little. In some communities, it is really, really important, but in most communities, it isn't a subject that would change their vote. Sadiq Khan talked about it a bit in the beginning, but I think this election here is about ULEZ, it's about safety in London, and it's about how much it costs to live in London. That's really what people are voting on.
Yeah, I mean, on those points then, the ULEZ £12.50 a day for people who perhaps don't have £12.50 a day, to be frank. Now, many in other parts of the country are saying this is just a plan to get people out of their cars, part of an overall green agenda. And then, secondly, I mean, building houses, he's promised the land of milk and honey. That hasn't happened.
Look, to address those two things, the mayor only hit his housing target because he went back to the government and negotiated downwards twice. The government were very generous to him and lowered the target, but he never mentioned that once. All he did was say, well, they've missed their own target. Well, they're a bit tougher on their own target than it was on his. He has failed to deliver housing in London. I'll say one little thing in his favour, it is tough. It is tough, but he definitely could have done better. For instance, he keeps asking for more money. He hasn't spent the £4 billion they've given him already. Yeah. So, spend that and then ask for more would be what I'd say about that. With the ULEZ, it's simple. Sadiq Khan didn't understand that London isn't an island. London is connected to the whole country, particularly the southeast of the country. And the economy of the outer London boroughs relies on that exchange of people and goods. And he disrupted that. And that's why people are so angry. And that's before you get into the disruption it's made to families, charities, and just generally moving around in London. And you saw in the Uxbridge by-election, it made a material difference. And I think it's one of the big things where it's allowed Susan to get much closer because she was aware of it because she listened.
Yeah, I mean, do you think if Boris had stood again in Uxbridge that he would have won that seat on
Absolutely.
On ULEZ?
He would have won because he's Boris. I want to be very clear. Part of the mess that the Tory party is in now, was done when we removed Boris. Let's make no mistake, one of the biggest majorities we've had since the Second World War, it was something to do with Boris. If you look at the council election results, they have been pretty bad, to say the least. Luckily, Boris was so affected, we started from a high point. So we've lost some, and my heart goes out to those councils.
But he won in 2012, right, with some people saying maybe he wouldn't do it. But in 2012, turnout was low, and with turnout's low today as well. It's lower since 2012, and that actually helps the Conservatives, does it not?
Look, a lower turnout suggests it would help Susan, but we have to be careful, because is that a lower turnout across the board, which basically means stalemate? Is it a lower turnout in the Conservative vote because people want to send a message before the general election? We don't know. I spoke to members of Susan's team and they said, look, we're cautiously optimistic. We ran our campaign, we hit our goals. We are now just seeing what Londoners think. So let's see how that low turnout affects.
All right, we'll see, Shaun, because neither of us, unfortunately, are Mystic Meg.
My crystal ball, I left it in my bag.
You'll have to bring it next time.
I will do.
We need you. Shaun Bailey, thank you very much for your time. Now, folks, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. Are Reform plotting a takeover of the Conservative Party? Well, John Redwood MP will join me to give his analysis on a set of bleak election results for the Conservatives. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's generally a north-south split today. We'll see cloudy conditions, outbreaks of rain in the north, the best of the sunshine across southern areas, almost a role reversal of yesterday. Going through the next few days and through the bank holiday weekend, low pressure generally remains in charge. So there will be outbreaks of rain and showers at times, but some sunshine too. And we do have sunshine across central southern parts through the rest of the day. Sunny spells, but showers will bubble up as we move through into the afternoon. Some of these heavy across southeast England. Further north, cloudy, outbreaks of rain. Again, some heavy thunderstorms possible. Temperatures here lower, 13 to 15 Celsius, up to around 18 degrees across the southeast in the best of the sunshine. Into this evening time, further rain for Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland. Some of this heavy at times. Elsewhere, generally dry, some clear skies. And with light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing later on. The wind starting to pick up across the far southwest with some rain moving in here. Under the clearest skies, temperatures dipping to mid to low single figures, so a chilly start across central southern parts with some mist and fog first thing. This burning away, plenty of sunshine through the day here. A weather front bringing cloud and rain into southern and southwestern parts as we go through the day. Staying cloudy for Northern Ireland, Scotland, the far north of England. Further showery rain here, but in any sunshine, temperatures lifting to around 18 or 19, possibly 20.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Thanks as ever for your company. Now, the Conservatives have suffered their worst set of local election results in over 40 years. And if the polls are to be believed, they could face a wipeout at the next general election. Well, joining me now is the political commentator, Matthew Stadlin. Matthew, the interesting element for me is the fact that you've got the Green Party nibbling at the Labour vote. Shaun Bailey's just said that that's the interesting dynamic in this election. That could have hurt Sadiq Khan. But you've also got the Reform vote in parts of the country evidently nibbling away at the Conservative Party's vote. Do you think actually there is going to be a fracturing of the main political parties, or is this just back to politics as normal?
I think Labour, of the two parties, are clearly in better shape. They no doubt are concerned about some of the very, very early statements made about the war in Gaza. What I would think most believe it was a slip-up on the part of Keir Starmer when he was talking about international law and aid and switching off gas and electricity and so forth. So that has obviously had some impact on the vote, but by far the bigger question is, come the general election, what sort of damage will Reform do to the Conservative vote?
Well, let's ask a man who may have one or two interests in this very question. Joining me now is the former Minister and Conservative MP, John Redwood. I mean, John, do you agree with Matthew's analysis there? Do you think actually Reform are your biggest threat when it comes to securing and keeping hold of seats you already have?
Well, when you get to a general election, people have to make a real choice, and the choice will be between a Labour-led government by Starmer or a Conservative government. And I think in that context, people of a Conservative disposition would be very wise to go with the Conservative Party, even though they're critical of it at the moment. But when you have by-elections or local elections, and people are faced with the choice between Reform and Conservative, some vote Reform because they think that will persuade the Conservative Party to be more conservative. And I can understand why they do that, but I don't think they would want to do that in a general election because they would end up with a Labour government.
Yeah, I mean, John, a lot of the comments from our viewers are saying things like, I'm so tired, sick and tired of being told not to vote for Reform because that will harm the Conservative Party. They're saying, why doesn't the Conservative Party just offer us a prospectus that we can actually vote for? Dare I say, be Conservative again? That's what they're saying, John.
Well, I'm very much in favour of that, as you well know, and I've put forward a lot of Conservative ideas being of goodwill towards the Conservative government, because I was elected as a Conservative MP, and I'm hoping they will adopt more of them. They've adopted some of them in the last few weeks, which is very welcome. I think the climate realism is a step in the right direction. Both what the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State said is a welcome change from the impractical and damaging net zero policies of the left-wing parties. They are now tax cutters. We've had 2 fiscal events with tax cuts. I think we need a third one before the general election. I've got ideas on how you pay for those tax cuts and how they should not just relate to people at work, but also savers and pensioners, and a number of issues over standing up to wokery, where some of the ministers are now saying the right thing. So I think the government is on a journey which I and Conservatives think is a very necessary one. But I repeat the point, I'm not lecturing people on how they vote. I'm a great believer in democratic will of the people. They'll all come with their own decisions. But
John Redwood,
it would be a bit odd if they all decided
we'll have to leave it there, John, unfortunately. Running out of time. Thank you very much for your time, though, as ever. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. Loads more coming up on today's show. First of all, though, we're going to have a look at the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. It's a mixed outlook, largely cloudy over the next 24 hours, particularly across the north of the UK, best of the sunshine in the south. Why? Well, generally low pressure dominates the weather pattern. This system bringing some heavier rain through a bank holiday Monday, showers elsewhere. And through the rest of the day, we've got this area of cloud across Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland, giving some showery outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, clearing skies overnight elsewhere. With light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches forming. Later on, this weather system starts to increase the cloud and bring some rain across the far southwest. Under the clearest skies, temperatures in single figures, so a chilly start to Sunday morning. Some mist and fog patches quickly clearing, then plenty of sunshine through the central swathe of the UK. It remains generally cloudy across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland through the day. Some patchy rain possible here, some heavier showers later. And this weather system slowly pushes northeastwards inland a little further, bringing cloud and rain to some southern parts of England and Wales. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures approaching 19 or 20 Celsius. Under the cloud, still feeling quite chilly. And a misty, murky start to bank holiday Monday. But again, this central part of the UK seeing the best of the sunshine as that morning mist and murk disappears, and then over the next few days we'll see high pressure starting to build in. It will settle down. We'll see more in the way of sunny spells and temperatures begin to rise.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams. It's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently it's been made by from organic fruits growing in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it. I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her products. But it's ended up winning for King Charles because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So why did they go?
Has gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan because they're saying, we don't want your jam, we're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow-style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website, Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth-style New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now by trying to cash in on her royal title, because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on Netflix. She's coming out with a cooking show. And she's, I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking. But I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So, are you an actress? Are you a guru? Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist? Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you? This is what we're asking. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
Hello and welcome to GB News Saturday. I'm Darren Grimes, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company on TV, online and on digital radio. We'll keep you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Coming up in this hour, are we about to see one of the biggest shocks in British political history? It's making Brexit look like child's play. It's Sadiq Khan versus Susan Hall. Sources say it's closer than anyone was expecting. But are the Tories going to fall just short? We'll bring you those results as soon as it happens. Now, we'll also be, of course, across the mayoral results today with 7 declarations taking place across England. Will Andy Street be victorious in the West Midlands? And then there's politics on the national scale. Has Starmer's Labour Party lost the Muslim vote? Is the writing on the wall for Rishi Sunak? Where's reform at? We're asking all of the big questions. Now, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let me know your thoughts on all the stories we'll be discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Sandra's written in, and Sandra's a bit annoyed that I cut John Redwood off. We were limited on time because we're having some tech issues, so I do apologise for that. But we'll get John back in the not-too-distant future. Or you can tweet us on our socials, folks. We're at GB News. First of all, though, here's your news with Ray Addison.
Cheers, Darren. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 1, our top stories this hour. Sir Keir Starmer says the Tories don't deserve to be in government for a moment longer. That's after Rishi Sunak lost hundreds of councillors in the local elections. 103 of 107 councils have declared so far, with Labour making major gains. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Celebrating a mayoral victory in the East Midlands, the Labour leader said the Tories' time is up.
I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your division, with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry. I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer.
Andrew Griffiths is Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology. He told us the public simply don't want Labour's policies.
Yeah, look, it's a difficult set of results. I think that was what was expected going in. There's going to be a very simple choice at the next election. Who walks through number 10 Downing Street? Is it Rishi Sunak with his plan that's starting to work now? Or is it Keir with no plan, or where they do have plans that don't really go with the grain of what the British people want?
Sir Keir Starmer says he remains confident that Sadiq Khan can win a third term as London Mayor. That's as the battle with Tory challenger Susan Hall appears to be closer than expected. The count is well underway, and we could have a final result this afternoon. So far, Mayor Khan's won Greenwich and Lewisham. That's the first London borough to declare. In total, 7 mayoral contests will be announced today. So far, Labour has retained Liverpool City region and South Yorkshire. A narrow contest is expected for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. We'll also be hearing from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. Boris Johnson has thanked polling staff who refused to let him vote without an ID. The former Prime Minister was turned away from a polling station on Thursday after he forgot valid identification. Writing in the Daily Mail, Mr Johnson said the 3 villagers were right to stick to the rules. The requirement to provide photo ID was actually introduced by Mr Johnson when he occupied number 10. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without running water in East Sussex, causing a drastic impact on businesses. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards on Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into Sunday. The issue was first reported Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. Dozens of migrants in 2 small boats have crossed the Channel today from France. Drone footage shows a French naval vessel following them until they reached English waters. Their largely male passengers were taken aboard a British Border Force vessel off the coast of Dover. More than 8,000 people have arrived so far this year. That's a new record for this period. 3 people have been charged after protesters blocked a coach taking asylum seekers to the Bibby Stockholm barge. The Met Police arrested 45 people after officers were called Thursday morning to Peckham, south-east London. The demonstrators could be heard chanting "No borders, no nations, stop deportations." 3 have now been charged with obstruction of the highway. Motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million vehicles will take to the roads today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean local routes are congested. Also, train strikes between Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier than usual. And finally, the King is set to become the patron of the Royal British Legion. That's a role that the late Queen held for more than 70 years. It follows a major review of more than 1,000 royal patronages, following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Charles will now be supporting a further 200 organisations. The decision comes as the Armed Forces charity prepares to mark the 80th anniversary of the Second World War D-Day landings on June the 6th. Well, for all our top stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen right now or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Darren.
Thank you as ever, Ray. Let's get stuck in today's topics. Now, those mayoral results are continuing to come in thick and fast across England today. The declaration in the West Midlands is fast approaching, where Conservative Andy Street is fighting tooth and nail to be re-elected. Well, joining me now from Birmingham is GB News' very own reporter, Jeff Moody. Jeff, what's the latest?
Well, as you say, counting is underway here. We're expecting the result in a couple of hours. What we do know at this early stage is that it's very close. To give you some idea, back in 2021, the last time this was fought, it was 54% for the Tory candidate and 46% for Labour. But this time it's expected to be a considerable amount closer than that. Well, the front-runner, who we still think is going to win, is Andy Street. He's the Conservative candidate. He's been mayor here for the last 2 terms, and he's been standing for a 3rd term. And I think what's very interesting about Andy Street is that he's nicknamed Brand Andy. His campaign has been very much about him and about what he has done for the West Midlands, not so much about his role within the Conservative Party. In fact, if you look at his leafleting, you wouldn't even know that he was a Conservative. There's no blue on it at all. It's all branded in a nice green colour, and he talks exclusively about what he has done for the area, his achievements in the past 2 terms. And they have been great. He's been, many people do believe he has been a very successful mayor. He's brought a lot of business and enterprise into the area too. And quite crucially, he's not charged a mayoral tax. He has the power to charge a mayoral tax, but he hasn't done so in the last 2 terms, and he says he's not going to in the next term too. He's very, very good on transport, a lot of people are saying. Lots of work on buses. He's got a very good record on housing too. He claims he's very proud of the fact that he's only built houses on brownfield sites. Now, one of the things that he has said, his main message in the run-up to today, he says, you either get me or you get Birmingham City Council. Now, what he means by that, of course, is Birmingham City Council was Labour-run and has recently declared itself bankrupt, as we know. So he's basically saying, look, if you go with the Labour candidate, you get more of the same, bankruptcy. Well, the Labour candidate, who is certainly snapping at his heels, is Richard Parker. He says, look, that's absolutely rubbish. The reason Birmingham City Council went bankrupt is because funding was capped and dropped from Westminster from the Tory government. That's why. He himself has a very good record in business. He was CEO of John Lewis, very proud of that record. But what I think is interesting about him is looking to see whether his campaign will be marred by the Middle East. A Labour campaigner said on Twitter a couple of days ago, it's the Middle East, not the West Midlands, that will have won Andy Street's the mayoralty. Once again, Hamas are the real villains. Well, that tweet was very quickly taken down, and Labour itself has been distancing itself from that tweet. First of all, because it kind of concedes defeat very early on, but also because it's claiming that people are moving away from Labour because of the Middle East. Well, if they are moving away from Labour, they'll move towards the independent, Ahmed Yaqub. He's standing on a pro-Palestinian ticket, so it'll be very interesting to find out exactly how big his support is and how much he has taken away from Labour. We should hopefully know it all at around 3 o'clock this afternoon.
All right, Jeff, thanks ever so for that brilliant analysis. We'll see what happens in a couple of hours. Now, folks, as well as that, the London mayoral results, they're on a knife edge between Sadiq Khan and Susan Hall. Could you, Les, be about to catch up with Sadiq Khan? Now, joining me is GB News' political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Olivia, I've just seen there's been a swing from Labour to the Conservatives in some of the latest election results.
There has been a swing from there's been a swing in Sadiq Khan's favour in a couple of the inner London constituencies, Lewisham and Greenwich among them. It is now looking pretty good for Sadiq Khan. Sources have told GB News from the Sadiq Khan team that they are pretty chipper at the moment. There was a lot of excitement late last night about Susan Hall potentially snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, but that has all died down a little bit this morning. There are swings of 4.5% and 5% to Sadiq Khan in Wandsworth and Merton and Greenwich and Lewisham respectively. If we see swings like that across the rest of London, then it looks like it's going to be a pretty easy win for Sadiq Khan. Of course, it is quite possible that in some of those outer London constituencies, those donut constituencies as they're called, in Bromley, Bexley, Dagenham, the Conservative vote could go up because of, as you mentioned, ULEZ. ULEZ is deeply, deeply unpopular, and Susan Hall, the Conservative candidate, has been campaigning on a very much anti-ULEZ ticket. So it could be that she increases her share of the vote in areas like that. But it now looks as though to win this mayoral election, she would have to get very, very lucky, and some really extraordinary things would have to happen in the remaining constituencies left to declare.
All right. Olivia Utley will be coming back to you, I've no doubt about that. Thank you very much, as ever. Joining me now, though, is my fellow Saturday 5 presenters, Albie Amancorner and Benjamin Butterworth. Now, folks, I mean, hearing that there, that excitement does seem, Albie, to have died down ever so slightly. Perhaps this happens every time, does it not? Where there's a flutter of excitement saying, oh, could they do it? Shaun Bailey, I remember the same things being said about him.
Well, exactly. I think, look, we will find out the results of what happened with the London mayoral election later on today. I think, as our colleague Olivia said, it is looking more difficult for Susan Hall to find a path to victory now. But I think, just from my perspective, of course, as someone who is on the centre-right of British politics and has looked at Sadiq Khan's record over his time as mayor, it looks like Londoners are going to be rewarding failure, because ultimately what has Sadiq Khan actually achieved during his time as London mayor? We're seeing sky-high levels of crime, sky-low levels of house building. The nightlife in London is completely dead after 11 o'clock, despite the fact he's paying his night chief czar £116,000 £1,000 a year to do what? I don't really know. So I think for a lot of us who were quite excited last night when we heard those rumours about perhaps it being quite close, are now feeling quite disappointed now.
I mean, Benjamin Butterworth, have you rewarded failure?
Well, look, I mean, it's interesting because there has been a swing towards Sadiq Khan in Merton and Wandsworth. Now, Olivia Utley is obviously right, that's in inner London, but it's an area that until quite recently was more Conservative than Labour. It's a part of London that the Conservatives should win because it's quite wealthy, it's a bit older, it's quite middle class. And so if Susan Hall is doing worse than Shaun Bailey did there for the Tories 3 years ago, then that's a sign that I think the kind of extraordinary results in outer London aren't going to happen. Now, the difference in turnout between Bexley and Bromley, outer London, and Tower Hamlets, probably the safest place for Labour in London, well, it's 17% higher in the more Tory area than the more Labour area. So that does suggest that if she's done well there, it could be much closer than expected. I think the reality is that it looks like Sadiq Khan will probably win based on the earliest indications, but Labour in London has been receiving poll numbers higher than it did in the 1990s under Blair for the last couple of years. And I suspect what you'll see today is a much closer margin between the Tories and Labour for mayor than what Labour is polling generally, which would say that Sadiq Khan isn't personally popular.
I'll be on that point that you heard earlier from Jeff Moody, where someone within Labour had said if actually Andrew Street wins it, it'll be Hamas that won it for the Conservatives. I mean, others have actually challenged that and declared it as racism by suggesting that there's an entire block of voters who only vote one way. Where do you stand on that? Do you think it was a racist statement to make, or do you think actually there's an element of truth to it?
I believe it might have even been a Labour MP who called it out as being racist, if I remember correctly. Look, it seems to me as a little bit of an odd comment to say that if a Tory person wins the mayoralty of the West Midlands, it is a win for Hamas. It's not a win for Hamas, it's a win for the Conservative Party. And I think we've got to be very careful in the United Kingdom not to start importing this sectarian-style politics from abroad. All right, there is an independent candidate in the West Midlands who is pro-Palestine, who is doing very well with a certain demographic of voters in the West Midlands. But ultimately, they are voting against a foreign policy decision that a British government has made. And perhaps if a British government made a different foreign policy decision, that candidate wouldn't be so attractive. So I worry about when people start saying things like, it's a win for Hamas, when actually what they're voting against is a British foreign policy decision.
But, Benjamin, you must be worried, though, about the religious sectarian element, given that George Galloway campaigning exclusively, it seems to me anyway, on a ticket stand, he said explicitly, this is for Gaza.
He did, and in Rochdale, the seat that he won not long ago, he said, we're going to wipe Labour off the map. Well, Labour won, I forget whether it's 42 or 44 of the 60 seats on that council. So he won 2 councillors there. So I think while Labour definitely has problems with apathy and opposition from sections of the Muslim community that had always usually voted for Labour, there's definitely been eaten away at, but actually it's not nearly as significant as people like George Galloway tried to claim. Look at Burnley, where lots of Labour councillors, I think 10 Labour councillors, resigned in opposition to Labour's position on Gaza. Well, actually, Labour won several of those seats back with the people they replaced the defectors with.
All right, OK, I've got a statement here from the Labour Party. A spokesman has said the Labour Party has strongly condemned this racist quote, which has not come from anyone who is speaking on behalf of the party or whose values are welcome in the party. Well, Sadiq Khan, though, has defended his record as mayor. Here's what he had to say.
We've been both tough on the complex causes of crime, deprivation, alienation, poverty, lack of opportunities, and tough on the causes of crime, supporting the police who've made good progress. So we've invested in record numbers of youth clubs, youth workers, young people, but also the police. And so since 2016, notwithstanding government austerity, notwithstanding a population going up by more than a million, homicides are down, gun crime is down, the number of young people injured with a knife is down, burglaries down. According to the Office for National Statistics, not my figures, the ONS figures, you're less likely to be a victim of violence in London than the rest of the country. You're less likely to be injured as a consequence of violence in London than the rest of the country.
All right, now, time for the latest Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize to date. It's an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash, and it could be all yours. Here's the details you need to enter.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox, and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say, why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, hey, you're all... The GB views are coming in thick and fast there. It always happens when Benjamin Butterworth's on the panel. Now, you're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. Loads more coming up. Can Londoners survive another term of Mayor Sadiq Khan? And should Labour be cock-a-hoop at their performance in the local elections? I'm going to speak to a former Labour minister, Shaun Woodward, next. You don't want to miss that. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Sacre bleu! French police used knives to sink asylum seekers' boats in Dunkirk before an army of migrants then go on to overpower tear gas cops and ride on another dinghy to the UK. So this is very dramatic. So the French authorities have been accused in the past of being too soft on migrants. They haven't done enough to stop the boats. On Tuesday, we had the deaths of 5 migrants, including a young girl. Really awful scenes where one group of migrants kind of boarded another group's boat and people were just killed in the crush. So they're now taking this very sort of action man, Bear Grylls kind of thing. They're wading into the surf with a great big knife and just slashing the dinghies, which does seem kind of obvious, doesn't it? It seems like a good move. Apparently, up to now, they haven't wanted to get involved. They haven't wanted to have violence with the migrants. But this is their new plan.
Except British taxpayers have been paying them hundreds of millions of pounds or euros to deal with this, and now finally they're able to deal with this, obviously on the back of an incredible tragedy. This tragedy can be utilised by both sides in terms of like however they want to use it. We need to open up more the borders or ensure that there's safety here, and then other people say let's prevent this from happening by stopping them getting in the water in the first place. So everybody's going to use it, but taking your point, Nick, and maybe moving to the question, Cressida, do you think that people are, and when I say people, I don't mean just GB News audience or people on the right, or just across the spectrum, are coming to appreciate that this is a real issue that has to be grappled with in a mature fashion, which starts with conversation, without accusations of you being racist?
Well, maybe, but I think most people have known that for a long time. I mean, the reason Rishi put it in his pledges was because people knew it was a big deal and then just continued not to address it.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch, sending in your thoughts. You're buzzing online. Les has written in, I don't know where Les is from in the country, but Les says, you would have to pay me mega bucks to live in lawless London or even to visit it. And that's a sentiment that I hear from, anecdotally, from many members of my own family. And actually, basically, Susan said London is really abysmal at the moment, and she dreads the fact of another 4 years of Sadiq Khan. Others, there's support, obviously, from the likes of Benjamin Butterworth for the record of the mayor over the past few years. And a lot of people are concerned about the rise of religious sectarianism and whether or not that's playing a role in the voting makeup and voting decisions up and down the country. Is Gaza having more of an impact than perhaps issues pertaining to the British people and British local electorates? MS said that they removed all assets from London and got the hell out. Khan has completely destroyed it. Harsh words indeed. But Keith says, if London votes Khan, you get what you deserve. So there's no forgiveness from Keith. Now, folks, let me know all of your thoughts on the stories we've been discussing. You can visit gbnews.com/yoursay. Join that conversation there. I am getting involved. Or message me on our socials at GB News. Now, yesterday, Labour were celebrating big victories in the Blackpool South by-election and the mayoral elections in places such as York and North Yorkshire and the North East. Here's Keir Starmer speaking today in the East Midlands, where they were also victorious.
I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands, there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your division, with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry, I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer.
Well, let's find out what my guest thinks. Joining me now is the former Labour MP and Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Shaun Woodward. Shaun, thank you very much for your company. What have you made of it, the results so far? I mean, do you think Sir John Curtis predicted, you know, complete annihilation, potentially, of the Conservatives? Do you think, actually, they've done better with results like Ben Houchen, dare I say, in Tees Valley?
I think it's been a pretty good set of results for Keir Starmer and for the Labour Party under his leadership. I mean, we've seen an extraordinary result again in Blackpool. That result, a 20% swing to Labour. We've seen that now as a pattern. That's the fifth by-election where we've seen swings of that kind. I think we've also got to remember, Darren, that, you know, these are taking place not in the middle of a parliament. They're not mid-term. This is on the eve of a general election, and I think there is a pattern here. And the pattern, I think, fundamentally is that people are fed up with the government. They think the Tories have failed, and it's time for a change. And I think whatever way you carve this, however you look at it, and of course you can pick out extreme examples of a result in Teesside, for example, which is a good result for the Conservatives. But at the end of the day, these are one and a few amongst a pattern which is not in the Conservative Party's favour. They've lost 500 councillors nearly. They've lost 12 councils. They're doing very, very badly. And of course, the Reform Party is making that worse for them. So, look, there's no complacency here. I think the Labour Party, after the terrible defeat suffered under Jeremy Corbyn, is clearly back in the game at the next general election in a very competitive place. But I think Keir and the whole Labour Party takes nothing for granted at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Shaun, Janet's just written in, and Janet says, sorry, I have to mute Starmer. He sounds like a drone. I mean, do you think that there is a groundswell of love and admiration for Sir Keir Starmer, or is there just a real falling out of love and favour with the Conservative Party?
Well, by and large, in general elections, governments lose them, oppositions don't win them. And if you look at the history of Britain in the last 50 years, that's the way it goes. But I do think that Keir Starmer is onto a number of things when he talks about what he wants to do with the country. And I think the country has made a verdict on the Conservative Party. And no matter what Rishi Sunak has done in the last year, We've seen all of his attempts to effectively bribe the electorate in budgets fail. We've seen his policies fail. We've seen his boats policy fail. We've seen his Rwanda policy, which is absolutely absurd in terms of dealing with the 100,000 plus people in the backlog. It's never going to touch that. That was delayed and pretty much looks like a failure. I think the country does feel the Conservative Party has run out of steam, run out of ideas, and it's very divided. And I think we've only got to look at the Reform Party, which is hemorrhaging large numbers of supporters from the Conservative Party, to see that in many ways, if Rishi Sunak doesn't go to the polls very soon, and that would be my advice, and I'm saying that because the longer he leaves it, the stronger I think reform will become in the country. That will divide the Conservative voting constituencies. And in our first past the post system, that means the other parties will probably do a great deal better. And the major party that will do best in that is the Labour Party.
Where are you at, Shaun, on the idea that the comment that was made by someone within, connected to the Labour Party, that actually saying, you know, the Hamas comment, actually it will be Hamas what won it for Andy Street, and that was actually viewed as a racist comment. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think it was a stupid remark to make. Look, what's happening in the Middle East is deeply upsetting, whichever side you may sit on. I mean, the fact of the matter is we need an immediate ceasefire in that area of the world. We need to see the hostages released. And let's remember, again, in all of this, there are still hostages which have been taken in October of last year, and they still haven't been released. And we know that a number have died while they've been held. So let's not forget about those hostages too. And on all of this, Keir Starmer has laid out a message for the Labour Party, and very, very clearly from some of the results we saw yesterday, some people don't like it, don't agree with it. That doesn't mean to say the message should change. It doesn't mean to say the policy should change. And the policy is clear. We need a ceasefire immediately, now, in Gaza. We need to stop the murder, in some cases, the deaths of many, many women and children. That has to end. We need humanitarian aid in there. But we also need the hostages released. And what we need to effectively have, therefore, is a peace process. And as somebody who conducted the peace process in Northern Ireland, however difficult it may be, I believe it is possible. But that doesn't mean to say that Keir Starmer is wrong to have sent the message he's done.
OK, all right. I mean, I can foresee a lot of divisions over that, Shaun. I don't think it's going to be a nest of singing birds, put it that way, because I think this
You're absolutely right.
It's going to get worse.
You're absolutely right.
Shaun, we are going to have to leave it there, though, unfortunately. But thank you very much for your time. That's Shaun Woodward, there, former Northern Ireland Secretary. Thank you very much. Now, folks, you're with GB News with me, Darren Grimes. It's GB News Saturday. There's massive results from the mayoral election still to come. We're going to be crossing live to Manchester in just a few moments. And I'll be asking, does Camilla deserve to be known as Queen or Queen Consort? Where do you stand on that? Let me know. First of all, though, here's the news with Ray Addison.
Good afternoon, 1:31. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top stories. So Keir Starmer says the Tories don't deserve to be in government for a moment longer. That's after Rishi Sunak lost hundreds of councillors in the local elections. Currently, 103 of 107 councils have declared so far, with Labour making major gains. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Sir Keir Starmer says he remains confident that Sadiq Khan can win a third term as London Mayor. That's as the battle with Tory challenger Susan Hall appears to be closer than previously expected. The count is well underway, and we could have a final result soon. So far, Mayor Khan has won Greenwich and Lewisham. That's the first London borough to declare. In total, 7 mayoral contests are being announced today, with Labour already retaining Liverpool City Region and South Yorkshire too. A narrow contest is expected for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. We'll also be hearing from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without running water in East Sussex, causing a drastic impact on businesses there. Southern Water say the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into tomorrow. The issue first started on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. And dozens of migrants in 2 small boats have crossed the Channel today from France. Drone footage shows a French naval vessel following them until they reached English waters. Their largely male passengers were taken aboard a British Border Force vessel off the coast of Dover. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray. Now, remember, folks, let me know your thoughts on all the stories we've been discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join the conversation there or message me on our socials. We're at GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's generally a north-south split today. We'll see cloudy conditions, outbreaks of rain in the north, the best of the sunshine across southern areas, almost a role reversal of yesterday. Going through the next few days and through the bank holiday weekend, low pressure generally remains in charge, so there will be outbreaks of rain and showers at times, but some sunshine too. And we do have sunshine across central southern parts through the rest of the day. Sunny spells, but as showers will bubble up as we move through into the afternoon, some of these heavy across southeast England. Further north, cloudy, outbreaks of rain. Again, some heavy thunderstorms possible. Temperatures here lower, 13 to 15 Celsius, up to around 18 degrees across the southeast in the best of the sunshine. Into this evening time, further rain for Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland. Some of this heavy at times. Elsewhere, generally dry, some clear skies. And with light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing later on. The wind's starting to pick up across the far southwest with some rain moving in here. Under the clearest skies, temperatures dipping to mid to low single figures, so a chilly start across central southern parts with some mist and fog first thing. This burning away, plenty of sunshine through the day here. A weather front bringing cloud and rain into southern and southwestern parts as we go through the day. Staying cloudy for Northern Ireland, Scotland, the far north of England. Further showery rain here, but in any sunshine, temperatures lifting to around 18 or 19, possibly 20.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, and not Dawn Neeson, I promise. I'm not self-identifying this weekend. But we're on your TV, online and on digital radio. Loads of you have been sending in your thoughts. Thank you very much for doing so. Tim says, we are free to vote reform, but we all know that this time around it will not make much difference. We may have to hold our Conservative noses for maybe even 2 terms of Labour. And a lot of you are actually irate about the idea that we should call Camilla Queen Camilla and not Queen Consort Camilla, which a lot of you are identifying as the wishes of our late and great Queen Elizabeth II. Jennifer says a lot of people have left London because of what Khan has done. If he wins London again, it will be finished completely. Just very briefly, Wombat says the recent tweet from Wes Streeting regarding a vote for Susan Hall tells you all you need to know about Labour. That annoyed a lot of people. Now, folks, mayoral results will continue to come in thick and fast across England. And over in Manchester, the so-called King of the North, Andy Burnham, has gone into battle at the ballot box. Joining me from Manchester is GB News reporter Jack Carson, award-winning reporter, as I always say. Jack, a pleasure to be with you. What's the latest?
Well, really interesting, actually, over the last couple of hours, what Labour here at the count have been saying about just how well they believe Andy Burnham might well have done. Certainly, still, it does look like Andy Burnham will win a 3rd term here in Manchester. Got a big majority last time out in 2021, winning 67% of the vote here, winning by more than 300,000 votes. Turnout was low, as it traditionally is in this local authority or mayoral authority election, only about 35% last year. We're waiting to hear just what the turnout was this year. Labour kind of saying here that they don't believe Andy Burnham will do as well as 2021 and getting 67% of the vote. They do believe he has dropped down. They did say they were worried about a few wards, particularly around Oldham. Now, of course, we saw in the local election results on Friday and overnight from Thursday that there were some independent candidates using that international issue of what's going on between Israel and Hamas that were taking votes away from Labour. So they're believing that there could be a few wards that Andy Burnham has lost support in, but still predicting that he will be getting enough support, much enough support. They say a good day for them would be between 50 to 60% of the vote share. But also interesting as well, we're hearing that Reform could well beat the Conservatives here in Manchester to 2nd. Now, we've not got proper confirmation just how well exactly they've done. I mean, the Conservatives only got around 20% of the vote last time out, just because of course, how dominant Andy Burnham has been as Manchester Mayor. But, of course, that split between Reform and the Conservatives could well see a bit of a shock 2nd place here in Manchester. But we are expecting the results very shortly.
All right. Thank you very much, as ever there, Jack. We'll come back to you later on. Joining me now from Birmingham for the West Midlands mayoral election is GB News reporter Jeff Moody. Jeff, has there been any movement?
Yes, we think the votes have now been counted, but they're being collated, which is taking some time. We're expecting the result in possibly half an hour, possibly up to an hour, so it is fairly imminent at the moment. We're still hearing that it is very, very close indeed. Just to give you some idea, back in 2021, it was 54% for the Tory candidate and 46% for the Labour candidate. It's expected to be considerably closer than that this time, but we're still hearing those rumours that Andy Street, the incumbent, will still have won, but exactly by how much we don't know. And of course these things can change. These are just rumours that we're hearing here on the ground. He's been mayor for 2 terms. This is now his 3rd term. And of course what's interesting about his campaign, Brand Andy he's been known as, is that he has really distanced himself from the Conservative Party. His whole branding, his whole campaign, his whole literature, all of the pamphlets and leaflets, they're all all a nice shade of green. There isn't a strip of blue on them. And interestingly, Rishi Sunak hasn't been to town. He's not been in the West Midlands to try and shore up his candidate. So it really has been the case that Andy Street has sort of distanced himself from the Tories and has been looking very much at his own record. And he has quite a sizable record. You know, he's been mayor here for 2 terms. He's been pointing to all of the achievements that he has brought to the area. He's brought a lot of business to the area, a lot of entrepreneurship too, major strides with housing. You know, he promised to keep housing to brownfield sites, and he certainly succeeded in that. And all of these things he's done without having to raise any form of tax. He is entitled to raise a mayoral tax, but he hasn't done that for his first 2 terms, and he says that if he wins a 3rd term, he won't either. His big campaign slogan, if you like, is, you know, if you vote, you either get me or you get Birmingham City Council. Now, what of course he means by that is Birmingham City Council, which is Labour, recently declared itself bankrupt. So he's kind of saying that if you go for the Labour candidate, Richard Parker, it's more of the same with Labour. But Richard Parker is saying, you know, that's really unfair. It's not the fault of the council or the fault of the Labour Party that there wasn't enough money coming from central government, a Conservative government. Well, Richard Parker also has a strong reputation in business. He was the CEO of John Lewis for a considerable amount of time. But it'll be interesting to see how hampered his campaign has been by issues in the Middle East. Very recently, a Labour campaigner tweeted, "It's the Middle East, not the West Midlands, that will have won Andy Street the mayoralty. Once again, Hamas are the real villains." Well, Labour has distanced itself from that tweet completely, but it will be interesting to see how much of the vote goes to the independent candidate, Ahmed Yaqub, who is standing on a pro-Palestinian ticket. So all to watch out for, particularly what it means, and we should know within an hour or 2.
Absolutely. There's a lot to scrutinise there, Jeff. Thank you very much for taking us through that. That's Jeff Moody there in the West Midlands. Folks, here, so with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, including this royal debate that has everyone divided. Does Camilla deserve to be known as Queen? Albie Amancorner and Benjamin Butterworth go head-to-head on that. Sparks will fly. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Children's stories like Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland now come with a trigger warning at universities, alerting readers to possible themes of white supremacy.
Yes, these warnings are being applied to colonial narratives, that's the claim, commonly found in adventure stories and famous novels from the Victorian era. Well, joining us now is the actor Charlie Lawson. And Charlie, these warnings have been applied to Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland. What's this university getting at?
Well, look, first of all, this is nothing new. We hadn't heard about it for a while. Universities have been doing this over the last couple of years. I remember having a chat with one of your colleagues. But when Gabriella, the lovely Gabby, phoned me up today, I had to beg her to put me on after 9 o'clock because I found myself getting rather irate about the whole thing. But I will do my best to be very polite.
Yes, keep it clean.
Yes, look, which is quite difficult for me, as you'll appreciate, over this subject. Look, this is universities just jumping on the same trying to be relevant bandwagon. Is it any wonder that we look at the quality of graduates from university, and in my humble opinion, some of them are slightly disappointing. But I did phone a couple of people I knew who had sons and daughters at various leading universities, and they had been speaking this morning. And thank the Lord, they think it's a complete load of bloody nonsense, as I do. Give the C.S. Lewis Centre a ring in East Belfast, because that's where your man came from. And I think you'll find you'll get short shrift, because we're not all about that in East Belfast. We don't censor anything.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Now, the question I'm asking, and it's got many of you very animated, Queen Camilla or Queen Consort? Now, courtiers have debated the matter in the months before the coronation, with some being concerned that this would set a precedent for future generations of the royal family. Well, joining me to discuss this is my fellow Saturday 5 presenters, Albie Amoncona and Benjamin Butterworth. Albie, I'm going to start with you, but I must admit, I have been deeply impressed and actually quite moved at the way in which Camilla has thrown herself into the role and performed, I think, a real service whilst His Majesty the King has been out of public duties during his cancer diagnosis.
I completely agree. Queen Camilla, as she should be called, and it is the tradition for the consort of the king, the wife of the king, to be known as Queen and then their first name, has done an amazing job, essentially being the figurehead of the royal family during what has been a very difficult time with Catherine, Princess of Wales' diagnosis of cancer, and of course His Majesty the King Charles's diagnosis with cancer. And now they're both undergoing treatment and in recovery, thank God. And the Queen Camilla, has done an amazing job leading the royal family, supporting the royal family, and also serving as a figurehead to the country during what's a really difficult time, which is why I find that the fact that there was this discussion within the palace about whether or not Queen Camilla should be known as Queen Camilla or Queen Consort is quite bizarre, because we look to the royal family as sort of these beacons of tradition, and it is tradition that the wife of the king is known as the Queen. It's as simple as that.
Do you, Benjamin, do you think actually the problem here is, you know, I know anecdotally there are still many members of my family who hark back and say, well, I don't like what happened with Princess Diana.
Yeah.
And also, is there an element of respect for our late and great Queen Elizabeth II, who allegedly, reportedly, said Queen Consort is how Camilla should be known?
I mean, Albie talks about tradition. You know, it's tradition to have two people, not three in a marriage. And clearly, you know, Diana famously felt that it was not a fair marriage, and it collapsed among the public's eyes. And I think that's why a lot of people, a lot of older people in this country in particular, who watched Diana, the Princess of Wales, and fell in love with her and admired her and felt that she was mistreated by the then Prince of Wales, have found it uncomfortable. I think there's no real doubt from what you read that Charles always wanted her to have the straightforward title Queen. The question was whether the public would accept it. And, you know, this piece in the Times, looking at it today, talks about that anxiety about whether they could convince the public that she is simply Queen. Now, I found it very odd to call her the Queen. I found it confusing, because I don't think anybody that remembers the Queen properly is the late Queen, there you go, is going to accept it. So I tried to call her Queen Camilla to distinguish. But I do think that the way she's behaved since they got married, the level of criticism that she's taken on the chin, her commitment to work in the last year, I think at the very least it's not the toxic question that it was just a couple of years ago. I think the public quite admire her. She comes across as quite down to earth, having a sort of work ethic that Her late Majesty would admire.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a real, albeit it's a real mixed bag of comments going on here, because, you know, Diana's commented in saying Queen Camilla, absolutely.
Is she back?
But it's not the latest great princess, a different Diana. That would be a turn up for the booth. I've got my Ouija board out now. Actually, some of the comments saying, well, Francis says very curtly, I think a commoner should only be consort, never queen.
No, I couldn't disagree more with that comment. Look, the wife of the king is known as the Queen. There was a time at the beginning of the late Queen's reign where there were actually three queens. There was Queen Mary, there was Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and there was the Queen Elizabeth the Great, who has recently just passed away back in 2022. So the wife of the king is known as the Queen. I completely understand what Benjamin is saying and what some of our viewers and listeners are saying with regards to them not thinking that Camilla should be known as the Queen because of what happened with the late Princess of Wales, Diana. But tradition must live on, and the wife of the king is known as the Queen, whether they're a commoner or not.
But, you know, it was, February 2022, when Her late Majesty said that she hopes in the fullness of time she'll be called Queen Consort. When Charles ascended to the throne, he referred to Queen Consort. And so, you know, I think it is understandable that some people will be angry that that seems to be overturned, a sort of unilateral change of that. The difficulty is that it kind of depends on what people think of Camilla as an individual. You know, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, I don't think many people would say that she should be called Queen Consort. She is a commoner, referring to that email you just had. You know, she's from supposedly a middle-class family, a lot richer than anyone I know, but, you know, not aristocracy. And I think the problem that the palace faced is that if they said that Camilla was to be Queen Consort, would you then have to do the same for Catherine, you know, in maybe 20 years' time, hopefully? And I think that would set a precedent issue that would cause issues down the generations. And you can also imagine, you know, would William turn around and say, hang on, you know, I want her to be called just the Queen. You're going to cause problems for us in a generation's time.
I mean, Albie, do you think Prince Harry has done the best PR job for Queen Camilla, there's me saying it now, for the Queen, or Queen Consort, that she ever could have possibly imagined? Because, I mean, him saying he dislikes, or making out he dislikes Camilla, well, most of the nation saying, well, I quite agree with Camilla on Harry.
I just think what's happened with Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex and the rest of the royal family is so sad. And look, I think it does mean that there are other members of the royal family who previously weren't as popular, looking more popular, perhaps Queen Camilla.
Well, folks, I'll let you decide at home. Let us know what you think. Now, folks, we're expecting to bring you the live results from the West Midlands and London in the next hour. Wait around for that. You won't want to miss it. First of all, though, we're going to get a look at the weather with Greg Dewhurst.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. It's a mixed outlook, largely cloudy over the next 24 hours, particularly across the north of the UK, best of the sunshine in the south. Why? Well, generally low pressure dominates the weather pattern this system, bringing some heavier rain through Bank Holiday Monday, showers elsewhere. And through the rest of the day, we've got this area of cloud across Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland, giving some showery outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, clearing skies overnight elsewhere. With light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches forming. Later on, this weather system starts to increase the cloud and bring some rain across the far southwest. Under the clearest skies, temperatures in single figures, so a chilly start to Sunday morning. Some mist and fog patches quickly clearing, then plenty of sunshine through the central swathe of the UK. It remains generally cloudy across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland through the day. Some patchy rain possible here, some heavier showers later. And this weather system slowly pushes northeastwards inland a little further, bringing cloud and rain to some southern parts of England and Wales. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures approaching 19 or 20 Celsius. Under the cloud, still feeling quite chilly. And a misty, murky start to Bank Holiday Monday. But again, this central part of the UK seeing the best of the sunshine as that morning mist and murk disappears, and then over the next few days we'll see high pressure starting to build in. It will settle down, we'll see more in the way of sunny spells and temperatures begin to rise.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hello and welcome back to GB News Saturday. I'm Darren Grimes. Thank you very much for your company. For the next hour, I'll be keeping you company on TV, online and on digital radio. This show will keep you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Coming up this hour, it's Sadiq Khan versus Susan Hall. Sources say it's closer than anyone was expecting. But it's now looking like it's going to be Labour's day in the capital. We've had one vote, another vote showing a 5% swing from Conservative to Labour. We'll bring you that result as it happens. We'll of course be across all the mayor results today, with 7 declarations taking place across England. Can Andy Street hold on to the West Midlands for the Tories? We're expecting that result in the next hour as well. And does Labour lose control of Oldham Council to independent candidates? I'm asking folks, has Starmer's party been punished over Gaza? And is the writing on the wall for Rishi Sunak? All of that and more to come in the next hour. Now, as I hope you know at home by now, this show is nothing without you and your views. Let me know your thoughts on all of the stories we'll be discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join the conversation there or message us on our socials. We're at GB News. First of all, though, it's your news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Darren. 2:01, our top stories this hour. Sir Keir Starmer says the Tories don't deserve to be in government for a moment longer. That's after Rishi Sunak lost hundreds of councillors in the local elections. 103 of 107 councils have now declared, with Labour making major gains. Election expert Sir John Curtis says the final outcome could be the Tories' worst performance for 40 years. Celebrating a mayoral victory in the East Midlands, the Labour leader said the Tories' time is up.
I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your division, with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry, I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer.
Andrew Griffith is Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology. He told us the public don't want Labour's policies.
Yeah, look, it's a difficult set of results. I think that was what was expected going in. There's going to be a very simple choice at the next election. Who walks through number 10 Downing Street? Is it Rishi Sunak with his plan that's starting to work now? Or is it Keir with no plan, or where they do have plans that don't really go with the grain of what the British people want?
So Keir Starmer says he remains confident that Sadiq Khan can win a third term as London Mayor. That's as the battle with Tory challenger Susan Hall was said to be closer than previously expected. The count is now well underway, and so far Mayor Khan has won the first few London boroughs to declare. But we could have a final result very, very soon. In total, 7 mayoral contests are being announced today, with Labour already retaining Liverpool City region and South Yorkshire as well. A narrow contest is expected for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. We'll also be hearing from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. Boris Johnson has thanked polling staff who refused to let him vote without an ID. The former Prime Minister was turned away from a polling station on Thursday after he forgot valid identification. Writing in the Daily Mail, Mr Johnson said the 3 villagers were right to stick to the rules. The requirement to provide photo ID was introduced by Mr Johnson when he occupied number 10. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without water in East Sussex, causing a drastic impact on local businesses. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into tomorrow. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. Dozens of migrants in 2 small boats have crossed the Channel today from France. Drone footage showed a French naval vessel following them until they reached English waters. Their largely male passengers were taken aboard a British Border Force vessel off the coast of Dover. More than 8,000 people have arrived so far this year. That's a new record for this period. 3 people have been charged after protesters blocked a coach taking asylum seekers to the Bibby Stockholm barge. The Met Police arrested 45 people after officers were called on Thursday morning to Peckham, South East London. The demonstrators could be heard chanting, "No borders, no nations, stop deportations." 3 have now been charged with obstruction of the highway. Motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million vehicles will take to the roads today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean local routes are congested. Also, train strikes between Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier than usual. And the King is set to become the patron of the Royal British Legion. That's a role that the late Queen held for more than 70 years. It follows a major review of more than 1,000 royal patronages following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. The decision comes as the Armed Forces charity prepares to mark the 80th anniversary of the Second World War D-Day landings on June 6th. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Darren.
Thank you very much, Ray. Let's get stuck into today's topics. Sadiq Khan appears to be pulling ahead in initial results in the London mayoral race. It was thought the result could be closer than polls suggested, but hopes are now fading that Susan Hall could pull off a shock victory. Well, joining me now to give us the latest from City Hall is GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley. Olivia, are you hearing that Labour sources are calling it?
I think we can safely say that Sadiq Khan has won the London mayoral election. He has won in 5 of the 14 London constituencies, including West Central, somewhere where the Conservatives won in 2021, and the southwest of London, which is normally a Lib Dem stronghold. It isn't even looking like it's going to be very much closer than the polls were predicting. So it feels as though that wave of excitement about the possibility of a shock Susan Hall victory has very much died away now. We should be absolutely sure in the next couple of hours. But Sadiq Khan is leading by 180,000 votes in London, and on the whole swings towards the current incumbent mayor in solidly Labour areas. There are swings of 5% towards Sadiq Khan. Why is that? Well, one reason is that the Green vote, which has been very strong in other parts of the country in the local elections, has collapsed in London. That could be because the Greens are turning towards Sadiq Khan because of his ULEZ policy, which has obviously been deeply unpopular among Conservative voters. And it could simply be because in London, this is very much a two-horse race. And so all of the parties that swing vaguely towards the left, the Lib Dems, the Greens, etc., are all throwing their weight behind Sadiq Khan. It could be, too, that Sadiq Khan has been helped by the new voting system, which has eradicated second preferences. Could be that all of those left-wing parties are now just pushing Sadiq Khan first in what is so clearly a two-horse race. Whatever's happened, it seems pretty clear that Sadiq Khan has won this race, and all of that excitement about the polls, perhaps about the results being closer than polls were predicting, doesn't really seem to have materialised.
All right, Olivia Utley there, thank you very much. We'll come back to you for the official result, but as Olivia says there, Labour sources saying that Sadiq Khan has clinched it. For all the best analysis and opinion on that story and more, you can go to our website, folks, gbnews.com. Well, joining me now is the president of the Conservative Primrose League, Henry Bolton, and journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Benjamin, Helen's written in, and Helen says, what have you done to Benjamin? He's starting to talk sense and be nice. Keep it up, Benjamin. I may have to start listening to you. So there's some praise from Helen at home. Now, I'm wondering then, Benjamin, are you about to disappoint Helen? Are you happier than a sort of pig in muck now?
Well, I think the thing about being a responsible journalist and commentator is that you say what you think and not what the audience wants. I mean, look, you know, Labour has declared victory. Obviously, the votes aren't all counted, but there's a clear indication. I think in the last sort of hour, West Central, one of the constituent parts of City Hall, has voted for Sadiq Khan, having never had a majority for Labour over the Tories before. The Conservatives have always won. That is a very wealthy part of London. And so that says if those places are shifting towards Labour, then the chances that Susan Hall, the Tory candidate, can overcome that in outer London is nonsense. And I don't think that should really be a surprise, because Susan Hall was an absolutely dire choice of candidate. Here is someone who has endorsed Donald Trump, that supported Brexit, that had made liked tweets complimenting Enoch Powell. Now, people can have their views, but the idea that that was going to convince Londoners to vote Conservative over Sadiq Khan was an absolutely ridiculous hypothesis, and you're seeing the consequences of it.
So before I bring Henry in then, would you associate with yourself with Wes Streeting's comments, where he said before the election a win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over?
Well, I think a lot of those people will have liked Susan Hall, yes.
Henry, I mean, come on.
I think it was an outrageous comment to make, and I think it's slightly outrageous for you to in any way defend it. If that had been the other way around, for somebody on the centre-right of politics had said something of equivalent meaning and weight, and insulting weight, about Sadiq Khan, there would have been an absolute outcry, which illustrates the fact there's a great deal of hypocrisy on the left. I think there is no need whatsoever to bandy about words like racist and so on when there is actually no grounds for doing so. Somebody expresses an opinion that is not racist, but you don't like it, so you label it negatively because you want to try and gain the ascendancy in an election. That is a person who has no integrity, no honesty, and frankly is the sort of reason that people switch off to politics. I think it's disgusting.
Henry, are you optimistic, before I go back to Benjamin, are you optimistic about London's future?
I think it's very difficult. London has huge challenges, and when you think about the fact that actually the Mayor of London, whoever the Mayor is, has, what, 17 billion budget, has huge leverage, huge power, but also is managing a massively complex society with all of the bits and pieces that go to support that society, policing and roads and everything else. And transport. It's a massive thing, and so it's a big super tanker that you've got to turn around. I'm very pessimistic about the future of London, because I think that Sadiq Khan has done absolutely nothing, but in many respects has encouraged, but done nothing to stem this flood of flagrant abuse of British tradition, British laws even. I've called it cultural displacement. I think London is unrecognisable compared to what it was 20 years ago. He has encouraged that process. He has facilitated that process, and I think that that's only going to go further in the next 10 years.
All right. I mean, Benjamin, come on. You're Sadiq Khan's biggest fan, are you not? You must want to come.
I wouldn't quite say that, to be honest. But I don't know what you mean by the change in London in the last 20 years. Are you referring to demographics?
Partly, yes. Oh, well, I'm talking about demographics, but I'm also talking about cultural stuff. I'm talking about the old markets are going. The entire character of the town has been changed.
What about black cab drivers? I mean, celebrating Ramadan over Easter, things like that.
Precisely. And then you get this two-tier policing. I suspect. No, I'll put it out there. I suspect that Sadiq Khan knew perfectly well, because he knows London, that a lot of his voters would be people who would support the Palestinian cause in Gaza, and that is why we've seen two-tier policing. Yeah. And he has benefited from that in this election. All right. I think that is appalling politics, and it's bringing in sectarianism and Islamic politics as well, which carries with it a whole raft of serious issues.
Now, Sadiq Khan, of course, isn't here to defend himself or to verify that claim. But, well, that would be a good one. But, Benjamin, I mean, do you accept that London has changed in that respect?
I mean, the great thing about London is its multiculturalism. It's the fact that the entire world lives in this city. You know, I did my undergraduate at the London School of Economics, which has more nationalities than any university in the world, and they're all exceptionally talented. I think that is a microcosm of what is brilliant about London. You know, bear in mind that there are only two regions of this country that put more tax in than they take out. That's London and the South East. So a lot of people attacking London should know that, you know, huge amounts of money come into this city which benefit the country. Now, I don't think Sadiq Khan is anti-Semitic. I don't think he was endorsing the allegation of two-tier policing that was made against him. I think he's met with the Jewish community extensively. I do also think that the Met has been dealing with it badly. But I think to put that simply at Sadiq Khan's door on what has been a very complicated situation, not just in London but in other parts of the country, is unfair. But what I would point out is that I still think, though Sadiq Khan's going to win, you will see a much closer result than what Labour is polling generally. And I think that should be a warning sign to Sadiq Khan that he's won a historic third term, the first three-term Mayor of London. But I suspect if the Tories had a better candidate and maybe an incumbent Labour government isn't that popular, you know, things could get tougher.
I think, very briefly on that, the Greens in some areas have been picking up support. I don't know whether it's the case in London yet. It's too early to really tell. But in other parts of the country, the Greens have been gaining support not on the basis of Green policies or the Green Party's position on anything, except on Gaza. There are candidates who have been shouting out Allah Akbar when they've been elected for the Green Party. Now, this is problematic.
I was in Leeds.
Sorry?
Leeds.
Yeah, in Leeds.
That,
yeah, in
Leeds,
Hare Hill and
was it? Right. Yeah.
But I think that is massively. We've got a big dilemma. democracy, and this is London's pretty much in the lead in this. Democracy means, quite rightly, and I would defend it to my dying breath, that we give people the opinion and the choices as to how they're governed and by who. But if in that process we then elect, or people are elected who fundamentally believe in the political approach or the Islamic approach to politics, that means that because the Quran,
the Green Party councillors believe in.
Well, I'm not talking about the Green Party. I'm talking about their candidates. I'm talking about their candidates.
About the Green Party.
I'm talking about their candidates. Yeah, not the Green Party. I'm talking about their candidates here. And if there are people being elected who believe that the government should be as interpreted from the Quran, not so you're governing on the basis of interpretation of what the Quran's guidance says, rather than governing on the basis of what the people want, government of the people by the people. You know, then you've got a problem. I see that sectarianism and that political Islam creeping in quite dramatically in this election.
All right. I mean, you can accept, Benjamin, that the weekly marches are becoming a bit much, surely.
Yeah, I find that a very difficult question because I think the right to protest and protest should be uncomfortable, but clearly it's caused problems for Jewish people going about their day-to-day lives, which is totally unacceptable. Also costs a fortune. So I think that's been a very difficult one, but I don't think it would have been any easier for a different mayor.
Okie doke. Right, folks, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to my panel. Now, folks, it's time for the latest Great British giveaway and your chance to win the biggest cash prize of the year so far. It's a whopping £20,000. Imagine what you could do with all of that extra cash. Here's how you could win it all.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You're with Darren Grimes, folks, on GB News Saturday. Lots more coming up on the show. Can Londoners survive another term of Mayor Sadiq Khan? And should Labour be cock-a-hoop at their performance at the ballot box? I speak to former Labour Minister Bill Rammell next. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I don't think you can go and watch a Shakespeare play unless you already know it. It's almost like you have to understand the story and the characters and perhaps have even done a bit of reading into it. Because if you went completely blind, especially in today's world where we don't speak in that kind of way, it is, I think, probably a bit alienating.
But Dawn is saying it is alienating at the moment because of the lack of representation.
You know, the actual phrasing they use, right, OK, the disproportionate representation propagated white, able-bodied, heterosexual, cisgender male narratives. I'm sure there's people sitting in a room going, what's the most ridiculous thing we can come up with today?
Yes.
But are really just chuck all these words at it, cisgender, and it's just insane. Of course, Shakespeare was what it was back in the day, and that's why it's mostly blokes and they're mostly white.
And lots of speculation that he was actually gay, isn't there? Because he never really saw Anne Hathaway very often and stayed away a lot of the time. I don't know, maybe he was a big
He might have been transgender for all I know. I mean, I don't...
Biggins, I'm looking at you.
No, I think you're right. I mean, you know, I think that goes for the profession too. I mean, I do think I mean, I remember seeing Macbeth in London with Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, and it was one of the most exciting evenings ever. And it was a cold night at the Donmar Theatre, outside and inside, and that gave it atmosphere. There are certain things, and you go along and see something else, and you think, I'll walk out in the interval.
Yeah. Macbeth is a sexy play, though.
Let's talk about, there's so many. Can I live to be 100?
Oh, this is depressing.
I think it is depressing. I like to stay here now. I don't want to live to 100.
don't say that. I'm right behind you.
I don't even want to. My father died at 63. That'll be me gone this year.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. I thank you ever so for your company. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts, very animated on that debate that we had between Henry Bolton and Benjamin Butterworth a moment ago. Now, Spencer says, Benjamin, you are so out of touch with London. It's lost its identity way before 20 years ago. It was someone else's version to make us multiculturalism. None of us had a choice in the matter. And Paula says, what Wes Streeton has said was the nail in the coffin for me, because I lean to the right. It's made me feel vulnerable. You know, that's Paula there actually saying that she feels, by being dismissed as a racist and all these other things for disagreeing with someone, I found that to be student politics. You know, Wes Streeton used to be in the National Union of Students. He's meant to not be anymore. I did find that deeply immature, to be perfectly honest with you. Another comment says, the great thing about London is multiculturalism. Ha! Is he kidding? It's destroyed London. And others getting in touch, saying that, London has perhaps had its day in not feeling comfortable to visit London. But keep coming, your thoughts coming in thick and fast. Let me know all your thoughts on the stories we've been discussing by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Join that conversation there or message us on our socials. We're at GB News. Now, as you might have heard just a moment ago, Sadiq Khan appears to be pulling ahead in the London mayoral race, but Labour didn't make the gains that they had hoped to make in some areas. So have they suffered a loss of votes in the Muslim community due to their stance on Gaza? Well, joining me now is former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Bill, thank you very much for your company. Let's start on Sadiq Khan then. I mean, it's looking like he's going to romp home today. Do you think actually it's going to be closer than most were expecting, though?
I actually don't. I mean, there were some weird briefings coming out last night. Yeah. Suggesting that it was going to be very close and that even Susan Hall could win. I mean, certainly based on the first 5 or 6 results I've seen, Sadiq is going to clearly win and probably win much more substantively than he did 4 years ago. Naturally, I think that is a good outcome.
Yeah, I mean, on that point about my last guests were debating the prevalence of religious sectarianism within a lot of these votes, not just in London, but in other parts of the country too, with high Muslim populations. Is that an element that Labour are having to become more alive to?
Well, I was listening to that debate and I thought Henry Bolton's attack on Sadiq actually going as far as suggesting that he intervened in the operational independence of the Metropolitan Police to force them to police demonstrations in a certain way without a shred of evidence was absolutely scandalous. But undoubtedly, if you look at the results of the elections last Thursday across the country, in communities where there are high Muslim population, then yes, the Labour Party has suffered a hit because of what's happening in Gaza. Now, I think part of that problem is that there's some really scandalous campaigning taking place with clipping things that Keir Starmer has said about Gaza and then putting it out on tweets, putting it out on Instagram. We've got to battle against that. We've got to make clear exactly where we stand on Gaza, that we support the right of Israel to exist. We support them in defending themselves against the horror of what happened last October. But we need a ceasefire because, you know, the conditions, the plight of ordinary Palestinians in Gaza is frankly intolerable. So we need to make that clear. But even where we've lost votes because of high concentration of Muslim voters, I don't think it's enough to hit us at the general election.
Yes, but I mean, as that population grows, maybe that could start to become a factor, right, in future elections, if not this year. But Bill, what do you say to viewers who are messaging in now? Many of them, by the way, will be Labour supporters or in the past have been Labour supporters. And they're saying they're really concerned about what they've seen in London over, well, since October 7th, basically. You know, that horrible terrorist atrocity in Israel committed by Hamas. We've seen people on the streets calling for jihad, calling for intifada. And they're worried, actually, that there's an element of two-tier policing in London, for example, and they don't want Labour to shift its stance to actually be more supportive of those that are viewed as more hard-line. Is that a concern of yours too?
I don't think we are going to be supporting people who are more hardline, and there have been instances. I mean, sorry, firstly, let me make clear, people have every right to demonstrate in support of Palestinians in Gaza on the streets of London. But some of the examples, you know, with people walking along with Nazi swastikas are not being challenged by the organisers of the demonstration. I think that is reprehensible, and the Labour Party and Keir Starmer thinks that is reprehensible. But, you know, there are passionately held views on both sides of the conflict, and peacefully and properly people have to have the right to protest. And that's what the police, in a very difficult job, are trying to balance. They don't always get it right, but I think they've got to, you know, police it properly. And that's what Sadiq Khan has been saying, and that's what Keir Starmer has been saying.
Yes, I mean, the other results then across the piece, I mean, Tees Valley, you know, Ben Houchen, the Conservative mayor, clung on there. But you had places like North Yorkshire and York going to the Labour Party. That wasn't expected. I mean, I certainly didn't expect it to happen. And actually, the country does seem to be moving in one direction. Is there a risk here that Labour becomes complacent?
The Labour Party has lost too many elections for us to become, throughout our history, to become complacent. But I think there is a pattern across these elections. You know, you look at the local elections, it's the worst Tory performance for about 40 years. You look at that astonishing result in the Blackpool South by-election, where we got a 26% swing to Labour, and then you're seeing a whole host of Labour mayors across the country being elected for the first time or being re-elected. And I think the pattern is clear and consistent, and it's all pointing to, and you never take anything for granted, but it is pointing to a very substantial Labour majority at the next general election. And, you know, why is that happening? It's happening because people are sick and tired of 14 years of chaos under the Tories, falling living standards, public services that have been cut to the bone, their mortgages going up because of Liz Truss's mad economic experiment when she was...
Oh, that's unfair. That's unfair. Mortgage rates went up in the United States of America, and I don't think America elected Liz Truss as the President of the United States.
Interest rates went up immediately following the botched mini-budget that Liz Truss put forward. Yes, there have been interest rate pressures across the world, but I don't think anyone can deny that the cavalier manner in which she disregarded the need for proper, sensible budget planning, excluding the Office for Budget Responsibility, sacking the permanent secretary at the Treasury, all of which sent the markets into mayhem and have made our economy and our livelihoods more challenging.
All right, Bill. Well, there are a fair few viewers who would quite like to sack a few civil servants who are standing against certain policies, like, dare I say, Rwanda, Bill, but I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. That's the former Labour Minister, Bill Rammell, there, giving his views on where hearing Sadiq Khan has clinched it, folks. You're with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. Loads more coming up. First of all, though, we're going to get the news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Darren. 2:32, our top stories. And Labour sources are saying that they are confident that Sadiq Khan has won the mayoral contest in London. That's despite the battle with Tory challenger Susan Hall being said to be closer than previously expected. The count is well underway, and so far, Mayor Khan has won the first 5 of 14 London boroughs to declare, gaining almost double the number of votes of his main challenger. Officials have asked candidates to arrive at City Hall for 4:30 this afternoon, so we could have a declaration very soon after that. Now, in total, 7 mayoral contests are being announced today, with Labour already retaining Liverpool City region and South Yorkshire too. A narrow contest is expected for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands. We'll also be hearing from 8 of 10 contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. So Keir Starmer says the Tories don't deserve to be in government for a moment longer. That's after Rishi Sunak lost hundreds of councillors in the local elections. 103 of 107 councils have been declared so far, with Labour making major gains. A burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without running water in East Sussex, causing a drastic impact on businesses. Southern Water says the disruption in St Leonards-on-Sea and parts of Hastings will continue into tomorrow. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. And finally, dozens of migrants in 2 small boats have crossed the Channel today from France. Drone footage showed a French naval vessel following them until they reached English waters. Their largely male passengers were taken aboard a British Border Force vessel off the coast of Dover. More than 8,000 people have arrived so far this year. That's a new record for the period. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Right, back to Darren.
Thanks very much, Ray. There's plenty more coming up on today's show, but before I tell you what we have lined up for you on this show, well, I'm a man that likes his nana, and I've got the perfect nana with me right here. And now, Nana Akua has joined me in the studio. Nana, what have you got coming up on your show?
Well, we have a very busy one. We'll be talking to Lee Anderson, because remember that ridiculous tweet from Wes Streeting?
Yeah.
Calling people who vote for Suzanne Hall white supremacists. Unbelievable. We're going to get his take on that, because, of course, he got in trouble for the comments that he made with regard to Sadiq Khan. Also, did you ever watch Married at First Sight?
Yes.
Well, do you remember Roz?
Right.
When she sat at the dinner table and somebody was using a remote control. She is going to be here live as my guest at 5. So I'm really looking forward to talking to her. So if you were a fan of Married at First Sight, I mean, I got addicted to the Australian ones, and then I couldn't help myself. Oh, it's so good. One after the other after the other. She's going to be here live in the studio, so I'm looking forward to her. But during our show, we suspect that we will get the results for the London mayoral election. So we suspect, we don't know, but obviously there are 14 in total. We've already had 4 or 5, I think, of the results already. So coming up in my show, stay with me if you want to find out what that result might be. We might be able to reveal it.
Final confirmation.
That's right.
Go into detail about it as well, Nana. So lots to come. We'll see and enjoy that, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Nana Akua. Lots more coming up on today's show. We'll go live to London, West Midlands and Manchester to bring you all of those latest election results. And with the rise of migrant tent cities in Ireland, might we end up seeing the same in Britain? Well, all of that and more to come, folks. I'm Darren Grimes, and you're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's generally a north-south split today. We'll see cloudy conditions, outbreaks of rain in the north, the best of the sunshine across southern areas, almost a role reversal of yesterday. Going through the next few days and through the bank holiday weekend, low pressure generally remains in charge, so there will be outbreaks of rain and showers at times, but some sunshine too. And we do have sunshine across central southern parts through the rest of the day. Sunny spells, but showers will bubble up as we move through into the afternoon. Some of these heavy across southeast England. Further north, cloudy, outbreaks of rain. Again, some heavy thunderstorms possible. Temperatures here lower, 13 to 15 Celsius, up to around 18 degrees across the southeast in the best of the sunshine. Into this evening time, further rain for Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland. Some of this heavy at times. Elsewhere, generally dry, some clear skies. And with light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches developing later on. The wind starting to pick up across the far southwest with some rain moving in here. Under the clearest skies, temperatures dipping to mid to low single figures, so a chilly start across central southern parts with some mist and fog first thing. This burning away, plenty of sunshine through the day here. A weather front bringing cloud and rain into southern and southwestern parts as we go through the day. Staying cloudy for Northern Ireland, Scotland, the far north of England. Further showery rain here, but in any sunshine, temperatures lifting to around 18 or 19, possibly 20.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Now, continuing that trend of being Britain's election channel, we're going to give you the mayoral results. They're continuing to come in thick and fast across England today. In Manchester, the so-called King of the North, Andy Burnham, has gone to battle at the ballot box. Joining me now from Manchester is GB News' award-winning reporter, Jack Carson. Jack, what's the latest up there?
Well, we are expecting that result imminently, but Labour sources telling us that they do believe that Andy Burnham has once again won in Manchester and the combined authority here, winning that mayoralty for the third term. He's got a big, ambitious plan for this third term. It seems to have gone down well with the voters. We are expecting that confirmation of his win shortly, but of course he won very well here a few years ago, back in 2021, receiving 67% of the vote on a a 35% turnout. Now, Labour telling us today they don't believe that it will be as high of a result, as high as a percentage and a win as much back in 2021, citing that it's always difficult for a mayor going into a third term to secure so much support, telling us there'll always be things that Burnham has done over the past couple of terms that people will and won't be happy with, but they do believe that it could be within 50 to 60% still of the vote. But they were citing there were some concerns around some wards, particularly Wornath in Oldham. We were told, of course we saw, didn't we, on Thursday night into Friday around their local council elections, particularly with a few independents standing on a more pro-Palestine ticket, that there were votes being taken away from Labour. Of course, Labour dropped out a candidate in that area as well. So we do know that they've been struggling to pick up some votes in some of those wards. So there were some of the concerns that the Labour Party have had here, whether Andy Burnham could engage with those communities. They told us that they do know they have to do more to win those votes back, to win and engage, to win and win that trust back from Muslim communities here in Manchester. But his big ambitious plan seems to have gone down well with the voters. Now, where the likes of Reform and Conservatives come is going to be quite interesting when the results are declared shortly. We had heard earlier, particularly, that maybe Reform might have done a lot better than was hoped. Of course, with Burnham taking so much of that percentage, it really is down to a very few votes that could decide who will come second in this contest. Last year, back in 2021, the Conservatives got around 20% of the vote, but Reform could well split that and could well come second here. So that'll be one to certainly watch out for when we get the results here. But Andy Burnham looking to have secured his third term as mayor.
All right, Jack, thank you very much for that update. Now, folks, meanwhile in Birmingham, the declaration in the West Midlands is expected imminently, where Conservative Andy Street is fighting tooth and nail to be re-elected. Joining me to give us the latest is GB News reporter Jeff Moody. Hello again, Jeff.
Hello to you. Well, there's general excitement here at the moment in the ICC, but it's not for the mayoral election, it's for the Police and Crime Commissioner. We've had some of the results, in fact, most of the results for that have come through. We've still got a couple to declare, but if you have a look down there, all of the supporters of both of the main candidates are gathering. The results are imminent. It looks like Labour's incumbent Police and Crime Commissioner for the West Midlands will be on course to retain his post. That's Simon Foster. We know we've found out in the last sort of 20 minutes or so that he's won 125,631 votes in the Birmingham City Council area, compared to just 77,798 for the Conservative candidate Tom Byrne. Mr Foster's won a large majority in Coventry too, 43,000. That does give him a commanding lead, with only the boroughs of Dudley, Sandwell and Walsall still to declare. So it's looking very likely that Mr Foster will continue in his role as Police and Crime Commissioner. But of course, we never know until the final results come through. As to the mayoral votes, well, we're not sure when that'll happen, but it will be shortly afterwards. The votes have been counted, they're just being collated now. So once they've got the Police and Crime Commissioner's results, that's when we'll hear the mayoral results. And we're still hearing that the incumbent, Andy Street, who's been there for 2 terms already, we're still hearing that he may just about pick the post again.
All right, well, you'll be there to keep us informed, so thank you very much, Jeff Moody, as ever. Now, folks, you're with me, Darren Grimes. Thank you to you too at home. We're on GB News Saturday. There's lots more coming up on GB News Saturday. The UK has now offered the Republic of Ireland the chance to get involved in the Rwanda scheme amid a growing row between the two countries over asylum seeker returns. Ain't it funny, folks? Ireland has just discovered the merits of a border. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this. The organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Darren Grimes, on your TV, online and on digital radio. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch. I thank you very much for doing so. There's a lot of doom and gloom about London, actually, from a lot of you who are saying that you don't feel that you're comfortable enough to actually visit London at the moment. And on Ireland, actually, a lot of you are, well, not too impressed with the idea of migrants who have got from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland actually being sent back to the United Kingdom. So on that, let's discuss that story then. The UK has offered the Republic of Ireland the chance to get involved in the Rwanda scheme amid a growing row between our 2 countries over asylum seeker returns. The Prime Minister made clear that the United Kingdom will not accept migrants from Ireland. That follows a rise in migrant tent cities in Dublin. For our radio listeners, we've just got scenes of these tents stacked outside of places. I heard that there were some tents being set outside of schools, which if I was a parent would not please me one iota. The Irish police have set about dismantling these tents. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the president of the Conservative Primrose League, Henry Bolton, and journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. I mean, Henry, it's pretty inevitable that this will impact Britain. I know they've left Britain, but I bet my bottom dollar they'll find their way back here, and if Ireland send them back, we'll just say, oh, well.
Yeah, I mean, they will come back if they wish to come back, really.
There's a common travel area.
Looking at your footage just now, those tents all look remarkably similar to each other. I wonder where they've come from. But I think there is an opportunity in this, and it doesn't look as though Rishi Sunak has identified it or is taking it. The reason that Ireland's got a problem is because we have migrants have travelled from here to there, obviously, just as they're travelling from France to here. What Rishi Sunak should do is sit down with Simon Harris, the Taoiseach, with Macron, with Ursula von der Leyen, and say, look, we have all got a massive problem here. This mass migration to Europe is a risk in economic terms, in security terms, in all manner of terms. We could go back to the previous conversation about political Islam as well, to an extent. We need to find a solution to this. Instead of playing ping-pong with asylum seekers, we need to come up with a regional strategy as to how we deal with the push, pull factors, and also the method of movement along the way.
Well, I can already hear Benjamin Butterworth saying, well, you, Henry, supported Brexit, so did that not...
I mean...
Yeah, but there's nothing to do with it. Nothing to do
It's extraordinary to hear the intern UKIP leader saying, what if we went and sat down with various European leaders and countries and had some kind of economic agreement that had deals on borders? Well, I think we had that.
Benjamin, I worked in Brussels for 3 years. I was in the room when you had council meetings. I was in the room with heads of government. I was in the room in the Political Security Committee, OK? The idea that the UK could actually exercise leadership of that sort... No, the UK could raise issues, could raise concerns, it would be discussed, there would be a meeting of minds. That is not leadership. From outside the European Union, we can say, this is... We're triggering it already with Rwanda. I've got all sorts of issues with Rwanda as a plan, but it's triggering a situation that can be mobilised, utilised, to then say, right, we have a problem. We are going to invite you all to London to discuss it. You couldn't do that if you were in the EU. You simply couldn't. Legally, you couldn't.
The Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, said last week that the reason that we don't have a deal to exchange migrants is because of Brexit.
Well, he's talking out of his...
Excuse me. But he was asked if he wasn't saying that, and he wouldn't dispute that was his implication.
Campaign, so, I mean, he's got...
Right, but, I mean, he is the Foreign Secretary.
Well,
hang on, Henry.
Can we deal with a point on that? Because you're fundamentally wrong. So is he. OK, people who say that Dublin 3 enabled us to send people back to France are factually wrong. OK. Dublin 3 enabled us to send people back to the EU country that they'd entered the EU through, if we could identify it, if that country agreed, and if we'd given them 3 consecutive opportunities to appeal. The numbers were minuscule, and we ended up taking more than we received.
What I would say is Ireland, which is very much in the EU, you know, they're not able to say, here you go, back to France with you.
Well, obviously what the Irish government is saying is that they want to send these people back to the United Kingdom. We've said no because the United Kingdom has said we want to send them back to France, and France has said no. So you've definitely got a stalemate in this scenario. And I think it's totally legitimate that we refuse to take them because you're seeing the same thing. You know, that Ireland and France are both part of the EU, and it's an EU decision to refuse that.
So it's not an EU issue.
No, it's that when we were in the EU, we were part of an agreement on how to make these exchanges.
No, we weren't.
A lot more diplomatic power.
We weren't.
Now,
That's a fallacy.
What I would say about the idea that Ireland should join the Rwanda plan, well, there was a lot of headlines conveniently before the local elections that they'd sent the first migrant, but they hadn't. It was under a completely different scheme, and the estimated cost of that person is 140 grand with all the rehousing.
So, in a word, should Ireland join the Rwanda scheme?
We shouldn't join the Rwanda scheme, let alone Ireland.
Should Ireland join?
No, I think it's the wrong approach. The approach is the one that I described earlier, and you can't have both together.
Okie-doke. I thank you very much, Benjamin Butterworth and Henry Bolton, there for their insight. You've been with me, Darren Grimes, on GB News Saturday. Thank you very much for your company. Don't go anywhere, though, because there's plenty more coming up on GB News today. In just a moment, it's Fiery Debate with Nana Aquia, and at 6 p.m, I'm back, you lucky lot. So is Benjamin Butterworth for the Saturday 5. First of all, though, we're going to get a look at the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest weather for GB News. It's a mixed outlook, largely cloudy over the next 24 hours, particularly across the north of the UK, best of the sunshine in the south. Why? Well, generally low pressure dominates the weather pattern. This system bringing some heavier rain through Bank Holiday Monday, showers elsewhere. And through the rest of the day, we've got this area of cloud across Northern Ireland, Northern England into Scotland, giving some showery outbreaks of rain, this heavy at times, clearing skies overnight elsewhere. With light winds, we'll see some mist and fog patches forming. Later on, this weather system starts to increase the cloud and bring some rain across the far southwest. Under the clearest skies, temperatures in single figures, so a chilly start to Sunday morning. Some mist and fog patches quickly clearing, then plenty of sunshine through the central swathe of the UK. It remains generally cloudy across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland through the day. Some patchy rain possible here, some heavier showers later. And this weather system slowly pushes northeastwards inland a little further, bringing cloud and rain to some southern parts of England and Wales. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures approaching 19 or 20 Celsius. Under the cloud, still feeling quite chilly. And a misty, murky start to Bank Holiday Monday. But again, this central part of the UK seeing the best of the sunshine as that morning mist and murk disappears, and then over the next few days we'll see high pressure starting to build in. It will settle down. We'll see more in the way of sunny spells and temperatures begin to rise.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akwe. Now for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and economist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Coming up in a few moments' time, I'll be mucking the week with GB News comedian Bruce Devlin. And then stay tuned, because on the show I'll be joined by Lee Anderson MP. He'll be shining a light on some of the latest stuff from Westminster, including the little tweet that was sent by Wes Streeting. I'd love to get his thoughts. Then we'll be discussing the Tory party. Is it the end as we know it? And if you are a fan of Married at First Sight, you will not want to miss star florist Rosalind Darlington, also known as Ros. But before we get started, let's get your latest news.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just gone 3 o'clock, and the top story this afternoon. Labour sources say they are confident that Sadiq Khan has won the mayoral contest in London. That's despite the battle with Conservative challenger Susan Hall being said to be closer than previously expected. Well, the count is well underway, and so far Mayor Khan has won the 5 of 6 London boroughs due to declare. Susan Hall has won just one of those. Officials have asked candidates to arrive at City Hall for 4:30 this afternoon, so we can expect to have a declaration soon after that. We will bring that to you here on GB News. In total, 7 contests are being announced today, with Labour already retaining Liverpool City region and South Yorkshire. A narrow contest is also expected for Conservative Mayor Andy Street in the West Midlands, and we'll also hear from 8 of 10 other contests for Police and Crime Commissioner. Sir Keir Starmer says the Conservatives don't deserve to be in power for a moment longer following the local elections. That's after Rishi Sunak lost hundreds of councillors in the elections over this week. 106 of 107 councils, we understand, have now declared so far, with Labour making major gains. Well, celebrating a victory in the East Midlands, the Labour leader said the Conservatives' time is up.
I think the message here is very, very clear. And I think across the East Midlands there's been a sending of that message to the government, which is we're fed up with your division, with your chaos, with your failure. 14 years. And I'm sorry, I don't care which political party you support. If you leave your country in a worse state than when you found it 14 years later, you do not deserve to be in government for a moment longer.
Andrew Griffith is Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology, and he told us earlier that the public doesn't want Labour's policies.
Yeah, look, it's a difficult set of results. I think that was what was expected going in. There's going to be a very simple choice at the next election. Who walks through number 10 Downing Street? Is it Rishi Sunak with his plan that's starting to work now? Or is it Keir with no plan, or where they do have plans that don't really go with the grain of what the British people want?
Boris Johnson has thanked polling staff who refused to let him vote without ID. The former Prime Minister was turned away from a polling station on Thursday after he forgot valid identification. Writing in the Daily Mail, Mr Johnson said 3 villagers were right to stick to the rules. The requirement to provide photo ID was introduced when Boris Johnson himself occupied number 10. In other news, a burst water main has left around 31,000 properties without water in East Sussex, causing a drastic impact on businesses. Southern Water says the disruption in parts of Hastings will continue into Sunday. The issue was first reported on Thursday, forcing the company to open water bottle stations. Schools, a leisure centre and a theatre in the area have all been forced to close. Dozens of migrants in 2 small boats have crossed the Channel today from France. Drone footage showed a French Navy vessel following them until they reached English waters. Their largely male passengers on board those boats were taken by British Border Force vessels off to the coast of Dover. More than 8,000 people have so far arrived this year. That's a new record for that period. 3 people have been charged after protesters blocked a coach that was taking asylum seekers from London to the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset. The Metropolitan Police arrested 45 people after officers were called on Thursday morning to Peckham, south-east of the capital. The demonstrators could be heard chanting, "No borders, no nations, stop deportations." 3 have now been charged with obstruction of the highway. And motorists are being warned to expect heavy traffic this bank holiday weekend. According to the RAC, around 3 million vehicles will take to the roads today alone. An increase in day trips and short breaks could mean local routes are congested. Also, train strikes between Tuesday and the following Saturday could lead to most roads being busier. And finally, some royal news. The King is set to become the patron of the Royal British Legion. That was a role the late Queen held for more than 70 years. It follows a major review of more than 1,000 royal patronages following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. The decision comes as the Armed Forces charity prepares to mark the 80th anniversary of the Second World War D-Day landings on June the 6th. Those are the headlines. More to come with Nana throughout the next hour. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. If you've just joined us, it's just coming up to 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. I'm Nana Okoye. Some breaking news from Manchester. Labour's Andy Burnham has been re-elected as the Greater Manchester Mayor. So if that was, I think that was a result that everyone expected. So